Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became a vigilante hero. If you guys enjoy this movie, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝐬𝐬 from 𝐬𝐻. So let's start the video. Green hair pointed every which way on the head of a middle school boy, a young once quirkless boy named Izuku Midoriya, past quirkless because of All Might. A hero he admired with every bone in his body had given him a quirk. Since that day Midoriya's life felt fulfilled. They'd meet up every day to train for this newfound power. Yet each up in his life came with a down. Villains were after the Midoriyas, having him constantly on the run. Their reasoning for doing so was still unknown. He crouched beside a trash can, rummaging through the trash bags that held value. Alone in an alleyway, cats surrounded him. The new shelter was a few boxes put together in an alleyway. Midoriya gathered the new clothes he found and wore them. The season slowly showed the beginning of winter, a dark green and black tracksuit that didn't quite fit his frame, but he was grateful nonetheless. Weeks ago, he came across a mask and hoodie, now becoming a part of his recurring outfit. With a big yellow bag on his back, Midoriya jumped onto a building. Vigilantism wasn't something he chose, it chose him. Bye cats, maybe we'll cross paths again. Midoriya's lips lowered at each corner, because he knew that he'd never come across them again. Sun shined, wind blew, leaving Midoriya squinting at the world. Morning shifts weren't his usual. Maybe honoring daylight heroes with his presence may do him some good. Underground heroes weren't appreciative when Midoriya saved the civilians. They failed. They grew jealous and didn't respect him because they were aware of him being a kid, a middle school boy who went under the name Deku. His identity was a secret for everyone except his childhood friend bully Bakugo. For their relationship, both described it as complicated. Bakugo was aware that Midoriya only became who he is now to find his mother. Parents of the blonde would try to find him to bring things that any young boy needed, but they couldn't provide a home. Determination oozed from Midoriya, and when he put his mind to something, no one could make him back down. An unstoppable force that is Deku. In the distance, a spiky-haired blonde boy peeked into the alleyways. Midoriya knew who it was and jumped around to meet up. 𝐀𝐦. Midoriya smiled gleefully. Bakugo spoke in a harsh tone. My parents told me to give you these. There is enough food for a few weeks if you eat like those rich people. Thank you. How's it going? Bakugo rolled his eyes, passing the food to him. Midoriya shoved the food into his bag. Still nothing. My parents have been too busy to search lately, Bakugo said bluntly. They already gave up. Yeah, I can't say I blame them. Bakugo dragged his hand down his face. You said you wouldn't give up. It kind of sounds like you are nerd. I'm not 𝐀𝐦. I just understand that by now people would assume the worst. But you aren't people, you're messed up in the head, Deku. Maybe. I'll tell them you said thank you and you're giving up. Maybe then they'll pity you enough and help again. Thanks. Bakugo lets out a large sigh, leaving without saying goodbye. From the start, they agreed to never say goodbye. Midoriya feared that saying bye would manifest never seeing each other again. His childhood friend turned bully that still stayed around. Even when his parents gave up, maybe Bakugo did care for him, but Midoriya dismissed that thought quickly. There was no way anyone could ever care for him, because if they did, they would have saved Midoriya from himself. A large earthquake shakes Deku out of his thoughts. The building he stood on trembled in the sudden movement. It couldn't be that far away, so he floated up to search for the source. Hands to the ground, shattered in the road. He found the culprit. Hey villain, sup Deku the vigilante. The woman smirked. I was looking for you. Deku dropped beside her, one for all coursing through his veins. Didn't know I had a fan. With a jolt of green electricity, he ran towards her. The earthquake villain dodged Deku in one swift motion. Based on what little information he had on her, he was walking into this fight blindly. He assumed the villain must have been new, because she wasn't a person from his usual rotation of hitmen hired by All for One. Or maybe there were more people out to get him. Stealing All Might's power might have put a bigger target on Deku's back. Not that he meant to do it in the first place. Judgment being clouded by being given a quirk, he had forgotten about the chase they fought, causing damage to whatever surrounded them. Deku kept the quirk usage to a minimum since his main goal was to keep the civilians safe. Sweat drenched his new tracksuit, proving that this fight was out of his wheelhouse. A boisterous laugh came from the distance, causing Deku to freeze in his spot, sending a jolt of energy under his feet before his body was flung through the air. Strong, muscular arms caught him. I am here, All Might. Of course it had to be him, All Might. The earthquake quirk woman's face fell. Oh, I think someone over there. All Might held the vigilante over his shoulder, still managing to punch her cold. Are you okay, young one? Deku squirmed out of his grasp. I'm okay. Let us have you checked out by someone. No, please, I have to go now. Deku walks backwards. But, thank you, All Might, Deku muttered under his breath. I'm sorry, Midoriya. Scratch the previous statement off. All Might and Bakugo are aware of his true identity. Wearing a mask didn't seem to conceal anything to those he knew. All Might must have thought poorly of Midoriya, considering he was a vigilante whose quirk used to be his own. Allowing a middle school boy to have one for all had been a mistake. Not only did Midoriya want to properly apologize, but also thank him. Without this quirk, he'd be kidnapped or dead. He owed his life to his idol and ex-mentor. All Might. Night filled the sky with a navy blue tint. Midoriya's stomach rumbled through the raggedy tracksuit he wore after a quick rummage through his bag. He found the food he wanted most: jelly pouches. Beside Midoriya's food, his notebook was on the side. After years of writing, it became ratted and large. Each page is filled with introspections and quirk analysis. With only a school bag to his name, Midoriya didn't have enough space for the rest of them. He had begged Bakugo to keep them safe in fear of them falling into the wrong hands, which was the only reason the boy accepted. On top of a roof, he kicked his feet back and forth on the edge. He began to regret not being checked out. Midoriya's whole body was sore from fighting. While eating, he wrote in his notebook in the quiet of night. Normally listening to music was what he'd do in times like these. Constantly looking for his mom came alongside boredom. The only social interaction Midoriya could partake in would be Bakugo. Civilians he saved or villains he beat. Life felt empty. Kid, what are you doing up here? Deku's head whipped around so hard it cracked his neck. A dark figure with long black hair stared back at him. Based on appearance alone, Deku knew that he was an underground hero. He also knew how it looked to see a beaten-up kid on a roof at night. That wasn't something Deku would ever consider doing. Not when his mom's life was on the line. If the circumstances were different, though, maybe then it would be something of concern. It's not what you think, the underground hero hummed. Isn't tonight a school night? You think I go to school? Deku scoffed. Does it look like I do? What is your name? What is yours? The man sighed. I don't even know why I tried. Deku the vigilante. I'd assume you're a vigilante, but I'm not so sure. The hero said sarcastically, face in a constant state of stoic. What's your hero name? How old are you? Answer me first. Deku crossed his arms with a pout on his face. He groaned while crossing his arms as well. Eraserhead. It was nice meeting you, Eraserhead. I've got to go though. Places to go and people to see. Thanks for the talk though. A faint smile appeared on Deku's lips as he got up to go away. Inko Midoriya. Does that happen to ring any bells? Deku's smile went upside down into a frown. Who's asking? I have intel that points to his son trying to find her. When watching the news, I noticed green hair coming out of your hoodie. Izuku. Scratch the other statement off. Apparently lots of people had figured out who he was. Deku. We can help you. You're just a kid that seems to be neglecting himself. We'll find you someone to care for you while we look for your mother. No. Midoriya's hands morphed into fists. You can't come here, start talking to me, and expect me to go with you. I don't need anyone's help to find my mom. I'm not a helpless kid anymore, kid. Before Eraserhead could finish his sentence, Deku was gone. He mentally cursed to himself at how close yet far the kid was from his grasp. This kid would end up killing himself before ever managing to find his mother at this rate. The kid had every right to not trust him, but damn, Midoriya needed their help. Eraserhead had seen the news of All Might saving him. That was what had triggered his teacher's instincts to go and find the kid. If Midoriya wanted to find his mom, he'd need to have help from higher-ups. Aizawa pulled out his phone, dialed, and pressed on a contact. It's Eraserhead. Yes, I was able to gain more information. I'll try for more when I see him again. Aizawa discussed with the detective Midoriya's usual route of movement. They've been documenting him for a while, but haven't stepped in as they find his quirk dangerous. A strong kid with a good quirk isn't unheard of. Their fear lies in the fact that it evolves. The Wild Goose Chase's ultimate goal was to take Midoriya to jail, let him spend his time while looking for Inko Midoriya. In the process, heroes are wrapped up in their beliefs that they forget the kid behind the mask, a kid wanting his mom back. That was all Aizawa saw. All Might was used to interviews with cameras and lights impairing his vision. Toshinori didn't like them, But it was a part of being a hero. Now he sat in full muscled form, sitting in an uncomfortably small chair, being interrogated by Detective 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭𝐈𝐿. 3 days after saving Midoriya from the villain, All Might was called to discuss what he knows about the boy. Sitting next to 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭𝐈𝐿 was a man he recognized. One of the teachers from 𝐬𝐡𝐢. Would you happen to be 𝐲𝐴𝐬 𝐈𝐬? The underground hero groaned. Why does he know my name? He'll be teaching at 𝐬𝐢 in the coming school year. Eraserhead meet All Might. All Might meet Eraserhead. We're done with formalities. This meeting isn't for that. Eraser rolls his eyes. All Might scratches his cheek nervously. Oh, of course, my apologies. What information do we already have on young Midoriya? 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭𝐈𝐿 leans in closer to the table. Appearance: green hair, freckles, normally found wearing worn-out tracksuits with a hood and mask. He is the son of 𝐴𝐻𝐻 Midoriya, the pro hero who was kidnapped months ago. Midoriya's quirk is interesting, an all-around power-up quirk with other additional things he can do all for one. Has a group called the League of Villains assigned as his hitman. He is on the run from them, which is why he cannot live anywhere. The boy hasn't died, meaning that at least Midoriya has been fed. Lastly, he is 14 years old. 14. Why wasn't I? You weren't told, Eraser, because we know how you'd react. Only recently have we found this out, by calling the middle schools in the area. All Might huffed out a breath. That is deeply concerning. What will you be doing to protect the boy? We have to track him, befriend him, then keep him out of this kidnapping mess. He is still just a kid, 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭𝐈𝐿 sternly stated. Eraserhead let out a long, exasperated sigh. So why is All Might here? You want him to take Midoriya? No, but I think he has a good shot of befriending him, right? All Might nodded, looking down at the metal table. Why, yes. What are you two not telling me? Eraser tilted his head in suspicion. All Might twiddled his thumbs nervously. Well, young Midoriya was my protege. I feel responsible in making sure he is okay after I've failed to be there for him. Us three will be working together on the case. This won't be easy. We may be working on this for months to even a year, as our leads aren't fleshed out. Please understand that going into this won't be a walk in the park, Eraserhead. And All Might nodded in unison. Guilt consumed his every thought when he saved the vigilante. If Toshinori was a better mentor, he might have been able to prevent this whole situation. What would Eraserhead and 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭𝐈𝐿 think of him? Did they think he wasn't fit to be a teacher? Were they right in thinking so? Maybe Nezu would find out and fire him before he even stepped foot in the 𝐬𝐢 halls. What did young Midoriya think? Was he upset that he couldn't be there for him, caring for him? Toshinori gave a quirk to a middle school boy who turned to vigilantism to save his mother. He made a terrible lapse of judgment. I'll find him, we'll find him, Eraser corrected with an unreadable look. They would catch up to Midoriya and bring him somewhere safe 1 year later. By some miracle unbeknownst to anyone, Midoriya survived an entire year and a few months with those living conditions. He continued his life as a vigilante, searching for his mother. A constant in his life that would never change. One for All Might's quirk he stole still improved as he became one with it. Civilians around Japan became familiar with the name Deku. Their opinions varied from appreciating what he does to trying to straight up murder him. The biggest change had been his night shifts, which were accompanied by a certain underground hero, Eraserhead. Deku called out, waving an excited hand frantically. Eraser nodded in acknowledgement as he sat at the edge of their usual meeting spot, a tall building that oversaw the houses and stores below. Normally Deku would never stop and take a breather at the same place. Every other day he had changed his mind. He knew if someone went to attack him, Eraserhead would beat them to a pulp. Hey kid. You're late. Deku blushed in embarrassment. Sorry, just got caught up in traffic. You know I'm bluffing, so let's leave it at that, Midoriya shrugged, while popping a jelly pouch into his mouth. Are you ever going to tell me who this mystery friend is? Eraser asked with a raise of his brow. We're not exactly friends, Deku sighed. And even if we were, I wouldn't tell you, ouch. As they sat together, letting the cold wind blow their hair, they conversated about anything on their mind. Eraserhead would reveal subtle personal facts about himself. Deku wouldn't, because there wasn't much to say. He didn't fully trust Eraser. He didn't forget their first meeting. It was more so being person-starved. The only person there was the underground hero. The kid you talk about, he reminds me of someone, Eraser added. Deku tilted his head. Really? Eraserhead opened his mouth a few times, making sure what he would say would be vague. A student of mine. "Oh yeah, I already know you're a teacher, you've hinted at it previously. I didn't think you'd remember." "Well, I have nothing better to do, I might as well psychoanalyze every word you say. The kid has a massive ego, which is stunting his growth as a hero. He certainly has an explosive personality." Eraser recalls, nodding. Deku's face turns white. What is his quirk? His hair color? Eye color? Name? Maybe this assumption was a shot in the dark. Or possibly an explosive blast in the dark. There must be numerous other people with an explosion quirk and big ego. Thinking that this mystery student was who he called 𝐀𝐦 would be absurd. Questions popped into Deku's mind like wildfire. What school did Eraser teach at? Is that person actually 𝗵𝘃𝐸? Does he know that they know each other? And this is a test. Has he told him about their conversations? Was Deku just overthinking this whole ordeal? "No, I won't be describing my student to you," Eraser stated, leaving no room for discussion. Deku didn't care about that though. "Then I'll tell you about him and gauge your reaction. He is blonde, spiky hair, with an explosion quirk. His name is Katsuki." Before he could finish, Eraserhead stood up. "Midoriya." "Yes? My time here is over. We'll meet the same time frame as usual." "Wait." Deku rose from the edge, almost falling in the process. "I'm leaving." Aizawa had to get out of there before the conversation progressed. The kid who gave Midoriya food so he wouldn't have to steal had been 𝗵𝘃𝐸 this entire time. By the way he reacted, Midoriya must have known he knew 𝗵𝘃𝐸, even though the vigilante stopped going to school. He was naturally intelligent. Sometimes Aizawa agreed to teach him a thing or two when they met up. He wouldn't forgive himself as a teacher if he didn't teach a kid who was unable to attend school throughout his shift. He had ignored the vibrating phone in his utility belt. All Might had been messaging him for their scheduled teacher tutoring. They'd correct assignments together once in a while. When they were both available, he seemed to warm up to Aizawa, but he kept himself closed off. Only by obligation did the two become somewhat friends, a mutual goal to take Deku the vigilante to safety. Heart beating out of his chest, Toshinori was gasping for breaths. Aizawa hadn't answered his grocery list of texts sent his way. He knew that he was spending time with young Midoriya again. Maybe something had gone terribly wrong. Is Aizawa in danger? The League might have found the both of them, taken them hostage, and they were being hurt. While he sat waiting for Aizawa to open his door, Toshinori knew that overthinking would be the death of him. With a large breath of cold air, he clicked on a contact at Aizawa. "I'm coming home, give me a second." Light blush appears on Toshinori's face. Thinking that what Aizawa said sounded like they were a married couple, anxious thoughts washed away at the rough voice of his coworker. Over time, he had developed feelings for the underground hero. The number one knew better than to get in a relationship though. The possibility of endangering who he dated was too grand. He was injured beyond repair. One more deathly fight, and he'd be out like a light. The call was ended by Aizawa after not hearing a reply from Toshinori. He bit his skin, foot bouncing up erratically. While he waited, calling to confirm Aizawa was fine didn't feel like enough. Who knew if it was a recording? Maybe a villain holding him hostage. Similar to the case of Midoriya knows 𝗵𝘃𝐸, Aizawa mutters. While unlocking his door, Toshinori jumped, not aware that the man was there already. "What?" "Let's talk inside." Aizawa ushered toward the door. Both shuffled into the house, settling themselves into their usual arrangement. Aizawa's kitchen, with a marble counter, bar stools along the side. Toshinori went to the kettle to make tea as he usually did for the two, but he was stopped by a firm grasp on his arm. "Midoriya knows 𝗵𝘃𝐸." A loud bang echoes in the now quiet room. The kettle that was once in Toshinori's hand had fallen out of his grasp. Logically speaking, it made sense. While he was his mentor, Midoriya spoke about a blonde-haired boy often, but 𝗵𝘃𝐸. Large burn marks were discovered on the boy's body while he wore a tank top. Back then, he would almost say it might have been the shape of a hand. What exactly did the vigilante tell Aizawa? What? Aizawa's head slumped, looking more exhausted than ever. 𝗵𝘃𝐸 has been the one giving him food. Oh. Well, when we used to train, I saw something unfortunate on young Midoriya's shoulder. Toshinori ran a hand through his hair. It was a burn mark in the shape of a hand. What? Aizawa gritted through his teeth. Toshinori waved his hand frantically. "Not that I'm assuming anything of young 𝗵𝘃𝐸, I'm simply recalling." "Yeah, I'm aware of what you meant by that. It's not professional to even hint at something like that though, no matter who did that to him. It seems as if the kid was bullied physically, and possibly even verbally. My apologies, Aizawa. It was wrong of me to accuse him of something like that, Toshinori admitted, resuming on making tea for the two of them. Aizawa grunted. It was. We could ask young Bakugo if he knew anyone else with a quirk that related to fire. That'd be ideal. Tension grew. As they did their own respective things in silence, Toshinori deeply regretted what he had said about his student. Aizawa was right. He had been unprofessional in thinking that burn mark was from Bakugo. Based on what little information they had, he had to make a call and discuss this new information with Tsukachi, possibly even bringing the Bakugo along to learn more after an entire year of dead ends. There was finally progress in their chase. Would it lead to anywhere? Toshinori was hopeful. Aizawa lowered his expectations. Optimistic and pessimistic views that rivaled one another. An unsuspecting Katsuki Bakugo was in for a treat, the treat being a green-haired, freckled vigilante. No matter how much he hated his guts, he pitied Midoriya for his mother's situation. His parents stopped giving him food a year ago, so Bakugo began to cook and buy the meals himself. Guilt wasn't a word in the vocabulary of the future number one. What he did was just to make sure the nerd didn't die. News reporters began to cover the story of Deku, the vigilante, causing a small fan base to form, glorifying what a torturous, self-destructive life he had was. Stupid. Nothing is cool or cute. When it comes to Midoriya, it's depressing. Bakubro, Kirishima exclaimed excitedly. Did you see that new video about Deku? He was spotted with a pro hero. Bakugo scoffed. You know I don't watch that crap. Why is he kinda? Mina trails off with a smirk. Don't. Even, isn't he a vigilante? Why do people like him so much? Zero asks, resting his elbows on his desk. Kirishima's jaw went slack in disbelief. Yeah, he's using his quirk illegally, but come on, he's too cool not to like. He saves a bunch of people, and the reporters have been guessing he's around our age. Bakugo rolled his eyes, annoyed at the subject. They insisted on talking about the entirety of homeroom class. When the class finally started, Bakugo felt weird, and he was sure his classmates felt it too. Aizawa glared daggers at him any chance he got throughout class. His anger grew more fierce. Waiting until the end of class to talk wouldn't work. Impatiently tapping his foot roughly on the ground, Bakugo crossed both arms. If Aizawa wanted to talk to him so badly, then maybe he should have pulled him aside before class. The flame of curiosity mixed with rage faded out after he finally told Bakugo to stay after class. What? Are you finally going to say what you've wanted to say to me this entire goddamn class? Aizawa gritted his teeth before starting. I would like to ask you about something. TCH whatever. Izuku Midoriya. Bakugo's eyes widened and raised his eyebrows. Is that name supposed to mean anything to me? Whatever Aizawa wanted to talk about, it must not be good. The nerd told him about knowing Bakugo, possibly referring to him as a friend. It made his blood boil. He just wanted to walk out the room right there. And then no way was Bakugo going to say anything about Midoriya. It really pissed him off. But acting dumb would be the best course of action. If Aizawa knew he was a vigilante, then it could cause trouble for Bakugo. He didn't care enough about him to risk his future hero license. Aizawa examined his face for a second, almost as if trying to see through the blonde. Bakugo, do you know him? Hell no, Bakugo. Aizawa exhales through his mouth. Do you know him? Finally, Bakugo snapped. What the hell do you want me to say? Yes. There, I said it. I know who that nerd is. Why did you lie to me then? I don't know. Probably because you're interrogating me like I'm some sort of villain. Aizawa clasped his hands together, resting it on his lap. I'm asking if you know him, but based on that reaction, you know more than you are letting on. Even if Midoriya wasn't in the same school as him, he still had to creep into his life at any chance he could. Aizawa, knowing his name, raised blaring lights of alarm in Bakugo's head. Whatever happened recently made it so. Midoriya exposed the relationship between the two. Next time Bakugo would meet up with him, he'd be sure to blast him right in the, are you aware of any bullying he faced while you two knew each other? Bakugo grumbled, aware that he was the wrong person to ask about that. I was aware. Why are you asking this? Do you happen to know anyone else at the time that had a fire quirk? Realization hit Bakugo. All the times he burned Midoriya's shoulders flashed into his mind. Was this a trick question? Aizawa had to know it was him by now. Everything he asked pointed at Bakugo being the culprit of those scars left on him. He'd never be allowed to continue learning at UA like this. Damn, Midoriya seemed to ruin his life without even being there. The look on Aizawa's face was enough to have Bakugo lowering his head in defeat, a foreign concept. Until now he knew that Midoriya was bullied by him. Something seemed off today. Midoriya couldn't exactly put his finger on it. Eraserhead was a cold person by nature that had not changed. His eyes did a look of pity, sorrow, and anger. Eye bags that rested beneath his eyes grew tenfold. Was he missing out on something? Had he done something wrong? Every fight they won that day was accompanied by soft glares, and thanks the underground hero and the vigilante sat beside one another on their meeting ledge. Food nowhere in sight. Finishing food quickly was so that Midoriya could finally be the one to start this apparently long-awaited conversation. Their last meeting was a week ago. Do you have something to share? Eraser's eyes met Deku's, and he sighed. Yes, I do. Tell, so you can stop looking at me like that. Like what? Eraserhead groans in annoyance. Whatever. You should know what this is about. After our last meeting, last time, their conversation drifted to a certain bully of his, Kaken. What? A light blush dusted his face. I mean Katsuki Bakugo. Yes, him. Eraserhead raises his eyebrow in suspicion. What about him? I spoke to him. Huh? Deku tilts his head, unsure if he misheard what the man had said. I spoke to Bakugo. Eraser spoke with venom in every word. The questions Deku had were endless, but his main one was simple. How? One interesting fact about Eraserhead was that he was a teacher. The underground hero was smart enough to never specify what age he taught, constantly being vague when Midoriya asked any questions: where he worked, who he taught, what he taught, all a mystery. Midoriya being the analyst he is knew this was weird. How did he manage to know and speak to Bakugo? It would insinuate that they knew each other before the conversation ever happened, which piqued his curiosity. Midoriya, you're mumbling. Eraser points out. Deku shouts, his mouth close with his hands, and runs a hand through his hair. But how? Eraserhead grew annoyed for a second, then calmed himself down. I told you already while you were too busy mumbling. I am his teacher. Okay. Midoriya had to admit he wasn't listening to Eraserhead. While his mumbling took over, that didn't change the fact that he admitted it. Bakugo is talented and strong, so he must have gone to UA. The thought scared Midoriya, because if that were true, he had befriended a teacher of his dream school. Bouncing off the walls and excitement might have been expected of him. The vigilante instead couldn't seem to move. Any information about Eraserhead was greatly appreciated. But this was too much. His underground hero partner had been a UA teacher this entire time. Maybe it was only an educated guess, as educated as a dropout could be. Hey kid, what is going on? Eraser rested a hand on his shoulder, noticing a tremble coursing his body. Deku didn't even know when he started to shake. Nothing. It isn't nothing. You know that you're his teacher. Yes, really? Yes. Do you work at UA? The black-haired man noticeably froze at the assumption, which prompted Midoriya to nod. He hit the nail right on its head. Piercing through the mystery of Eraserhead, a teacher at the prestigious school UA, where he taught Katsuki Bakugo. After a year of barely any progress, they had finally got somewhere with each other. Secrets that they withheld had spilled and were laid out bare. It was about time that the vigilante and hero had a talk. Secrets attached. Eraser huffs out a breath. Yes. Confirmation of the guess almost sent Deku off the roof. They sat on Eraserhead, wrapped his capture scarf around the vigilante, keeping him dangling over the street. Deku's eyes looked down at the ground, longing, a glint of acceptance in his eyes. The teacher notices and pulls him back to the ledge. Be careful. Expecting a shaken-up expression, Eraserhead looked Deku in the eye. His green eyes didn't meet his. They were focused on the floor. A weird feeling settled in Deku's heart, needing the desire to let what would happen happen. Eraserhead grabbed both his shoulders when not hearing from the kid, Midoriya. Looking at his eyes, terrified Aizawa, the kid almost died, and he looked upset by it. He knew there must be things wrong with Midoriya, but he was still in the dark about how bad it really was. Was he suicidal? Maybe it was a stretch, as he didn't know Midoriya well enough to make such a bold assumption. Aizawa had an assumption made about him, though, so he supposed he was allowed to do the same. Thought about dying before. Bluntness was a big part of Aizawa. That he sometimes didn't enjoy. This was one of those times. His expression looked unimpressed, and his statement was blunt, a gruff voice. Topping it off, he sounded like a prick. To fix the mess Aizawa made, he tried to smile. Then remembering how his smile looked, it was better not to scare the vigilante. Being a teacher didn't mean he knew how to be gentle with kids. Deku looked up at the man, chuckling a bit. What was that? Is that your attempt at a normal conversation with me? Yeah, I do think about dying. It's pretty normal. Deku shrugs. Eraser looks at him sternly. That isn't normal. Haven't you thought about it? How would it feel to die? Deku sat back on the ledge, patting the space beside him. Night was still at high tide, the both of them sitting back on the building. They sat an inch apart, letting the silence linger. Midoriya's questions normally brought up memories. He'd rather not think of. This question was the one to completely leave Aizawa shattered, not only for how easily the vigilante said he was suicidal, but for himself as well. Watching Uburo die was a world-ending experience. Every rational, intellectual part of Aizawa said he should keep silent, not to bring up his trauma to this literal kid. My friend died. Got him. Deku's head whipped around so fast that it made a cracking noise. I'm sorry. Run that by me again? I said my friend died. Sorry for your loss. Deku looked sad and confused. But why are you telling me this? Eraserhead's hands were in fists, trying to hold back the tears in his eyes. He died in front of me. After that I hated myself. I couldn't and didn't save him. Even though he was right there, that is when I wanted to die. Out of nowhere, Aizawa feels hands wiping his tears that he didn't even know were flowing. Dirty, scarred hands of Midoriya were the culprit. Physical touch coming from him wasn't a surprise. The kid was quite touch-starved from never being touched because he was always on the run. What was different this time was that he held onto Aizawa tightly, wiping every new droplet that went down his cheek. He was supposed to push away. He was supposed to be an adult. Yet he broke down in front of Midoriya. As he looked at the vigilante, he realized he was crying as well. What was he crying for? Eraser. Eraserhead replies with a shaky voice. What? Don't blame yourself. If Aizawa wasn't already crying, he'd be crying hysterically now. Why was this vigilante kid comforting him when he wasn't the one who needed it? His mom was kidnapped when he was in middle school. Midoriya should be the one having this breakdown. He came to help him, not have it the other way around. Kid, please. I'm fine. Deku breaks the hug and looks at him with teary-eyed disbelief. Oh, really? Don't get sassy with me. Midoriya Eraser let out a small sad laugh. Finally, after that show by Aizawa, they were back on track. He needed to discuss the bullying caused by Bakugo. Nezu had already got him in deep trouble. Talking to the victim of his insults and abuse was a vital part of Aizawa's goal. His boss assigned him to do it since apparently Midoriya trusted him enough. Aizawa highly doubted the kid's trust in him. Now we have to talk about Bakugo. I have been informed that he bullied you for years. He confessed to it. Deku looked disappointed. Really? But why? He's a hero in training, so I hope this doesn't ruin his record. If it does next time we meet. Aizawa intercepts. There will not be a next time. With your help, we can get you a restraining order against Bakugo. You can't be serious. A restraining order? Why wouldn't you want one? Eraser asks, wiping the rest of his tears off his face. Deku looks at Eraserhead like he grew 3 heads, which isn't that surprising in a world of quirks. He's changed. Just because 𝐀𝐦 was mean to me doesn't mean we have to go that far. He hurt you. Think logically for a second. I am. When everyone else forgot about me, 𝐀𝐦 stayed and helped me by making me food, buying me clothes, and keeping my notebooks stored away in his room. He's actually helped me. Deku's face twists in anger and shame, knowing he's at fault for causing Bakugo trouble. Eraserhead sighs in defeat. I know I've asked you already, but I'll ask again. Would you like to be placed into someone's care? No, I don't want anyone's help. Would you like to be placed in my care? Midoriya's mouth went agape, and so did Aizawa's. He wasn't expecting himself to offer that in the heat of the moment. He blurted out something he could do. Why hadn't he taken the vigilante yet? Aizawa knew from the breakdown alone that he wasn't ready to be a parent. Especially to a kid as unstable as he is. Being a dad was not on his bucket list, and it wouldn't make it there anytime soon. Then he looked into Midoriya's eyes, and he felt weakened. The kid looked with utmost hope, tears already falling down his eyes. There was no way to stop this. Aizawa accepted his fate. Deku's bottom lip is wobbly as he speaks. You mean it? Eraserhead tried not to show his hesitation. Yeah, kid, okay. So you finally will allow someone to take care of you? Eraser asks in disbelief, wondering how after all this time he finally got to him. Deku smirked. Take it or leave it, I'll take it. Let's go. The black car revved loudly as it sped through the road, speeding and swerving with desperation. With a purpose, Toshinori drove his car to Aizawa's house. When he got a very ominous message from the man who held his heart, maybe the number one's mind was in the gutter. The text made his face heat up with anxious and intimate thoughts. Come over now, definitely wishful thinking. The emergency sounded intense. That didn't stop Toshinori from taking a shower. Dressing up in nice crisp clothing to look presentable, he would stay in his regular body most times around the man. But if they would do more, he'd change to the muscular form. Hope would be the death of Toshinori. 2 condoms of vastly different sizes and lube in his suitcase as proof. This was peak desperation for the hero. When he arrived at the Aizawa household, his face dropped. The underground hero was nowhere to be seen again. A second time, Toshinori would have to wait outside with his own thoughts. With a seat on the same bench, he waited. Maybe Aizawa would prefer if his clothes were on the floor instead. He dismissed that thought, lusting over a coworker. This badly was such a poor idea. You're never paying attention when I walk by you. The dark figure was accompanied by another smaller one. He didn't need a second glance to recognize who stood beside Aizawa. Midoriya, his successor, was finally here. It took a lot of Toshinori to hold back from hugging the boy so hard until his bones break in half. Tense, his boy looked too tense for that at the moment. Feeling disappointed at this meeting not being more, was dismissed by the Vigilante's appearance. Young Midoriya, my boy. Midoriya flinched. High All Might. Awkward silence was between the three while Aizawa dragged the boy into his house. Toshinori followed them in disbelief. Aizawa? Let's get settled inside before we talk, all right? Guest rooms aren't uncommon. Toshinori was glad the man had one, even though it looked like it hadn't been in use in years. Midoriya was settling in. It seemed like he would be moving there. The boy was handed Aizawa's old clothes and a towel for him to shower in. All day, all night. Vigilante didn't have much time to shower. Both heroes were happy he was safe. But that boy stunk up the entire house. As soon as Midoriya closed the bathroom door, they began to conversate. How did you talk to him for a year while he smelt like that? Toshinori chuckled. Sitting on the couch, Aizawa joined him and sighed. I sprayed perfume on him whenever he turned away. Toshinori inspected his hero costume and indeed found a perfume bottle halfway empty. The wandering eyes on his hero costume caused Aizawa to look away. A red tint flushed the number one hero's face. Yes, I see. More importantly, I already notified Tsukachi about me taking him in. The kid will be in my house. If you'd ever want to talk about whatever happened between you two. Speaking of taking him in, why are you doing this exactly? Toshinori wondered, trying not to sound too judgmental. It was an accident. Aizawa put his fingers on the bridge of his nose. I was talking to him about Bakugo, then we started shouting, and somehow that ended up with me asking if he wanted to stay in my house. The fact that Midoriya agreed is surprising. Why did you text me then? Toshinori looked slightly amused. To ask for your help. This left Toshinori to cough some blood out onto a handkerchief. As usual, Aizawa went and grabbed him a glass of water. It was a routine for the two. Several chugs of water later, Toshinori smiled, a genuine smile, not one fabricated by the All Might persona. Sure, I'll help. They both decided to become Midoriya's guardians together. The showerhead sprayed water onto Midoriya's dirty, scarred-up body. Standing there motionless, thoughts of what had transpired in the past few hours, how he had ended up in Eraserhead's home, and would be living there. Midoriya was in shock. Rubbing a soapy lather to cleanse himself, every wound stung, while the harsh hot water jabbed at them. Visible grimace flashed on his face until the bitter end of the shower. It felt invasive to be in Eraserhead's home. After barely knowing much about the underground hero, after placing his white towel around his hips, there was a pill bottle that fell off of the sink before Midoriya could read off what it said. Light knocks came from the other side of the bathroom door. Young Midoriya, when you are ready, I would like to talk. Aizawa has left to buy you some things you may need. Midoriya started quickly changing into Eraser's clothes before stopping at the name drop. Aizawa. Aizawa hasn't told you his name yet. My apologies. All Might huffed, feeling bad for what he had done. It's fine. It was in fact not fine in the slightest, a year of a somewhat friendship partnership, and Midoriya didn't even know his name. Eraserhead's civilian name was 𝐲𝐻 this entire time. He knew he didn't know much about the man. That didn't change the fact that Midoriya felt a pang of jealousy, that even his ex-mentor knew both the vigilante and underground hero have been friends for a year. Yet their conversations never really went anywhere. To be fair, he stood in front of the mirror. As he examined the clothes 𝐲𝐻 gave him, Midoriya's body was clearly too small for them despite his now more muscular build, the shirt exposing a shoulder. Pant waistband being tightened to its limit. Steam from the hot shower escaped as he left the bathroom. Sitting on the couch, while nervously bouncing his leg, was All Might. His head whipped around to face Midoriya. Then, after the initial shock of how he looked, pats the space beside him. "We should talk." Understanding where this conversation would go, Midoriya complied and sat beside him. "Yes, All Might." "Ah, you can call me Toshinori." All Might waves his hand dismissively. "Since both 𝐲𝐻 and I will be taking care of you." "Both of you?" Midoriya tilts his head in confusion. "That is part of what I wanted to talk about. 𝐲𝐻 will be taking care of you. But I've agreed to as well. We will assist you while looking for your mother. Our main objective is to ensure your safety. Though this also leads me to the question of why have you decided to stay with 𝐲𝐻?" Midoriya looks down for a moment, sighing. 𝐲𝐻? I don't trust him. I'm aware that you're both on this project to help me and save my mom or something along those lines. But I'm worried about Bakugo. Young Bakugo. There is no need to. He is perfectly. He's not. I've ruined everything for him, for my mom, for you, for 𝐲𝐻. I'm afraid that soon enough I'll be left alone. It's selfish. But that's why I agreed. I'm terrified of ruining the only connections I have." Midoriya shouted with tears falling down his cheeks, squeezing his eyes shut, couldn't stop the crying. Midoriya's figure continued to tremble. For the first time, aloud, he confessed to how he felt about this whole ordeal. At least part of his thoughts and feelings, finding his mom is and will always be Midoriya's top priority. He'd beat any villain for that. Human needs weren't met for him as he lived like this. It was a struggle to admit it to himself. But Midoriya yearned for a normal life. Some days he'd spent on tall buildings to look down at the civilians and heroes alike, watching connections form, relationships grow, while he was stuck chasing all for one. Never in Midoriya's life had he chosen to be selfish. Toshinori reached his hand out to Midoriya's shoulder to comfort the boy, yet he pulled away from the touch. He looked at the vigilante with a sad expression. "My boy, that isn't selfish in the slightest. People need others, those that they can rely on. I assure you that neither 𝐲𝐻 nor I will mind being those people for you." "Well, he's not the one here saying this. Why should I trust you?" "You are not obligated to." Toshinori sighs. "Now we should also talk about one for all." Midoriya scoffs. "What is there to talk about? Me leaving you?" "Yes, somewhat. I understand that you did what you had to do. If you would not mind, I'd like to reoffer my mentoring services to you." "Really?" Toshinori nodded. "This quirk is a powerful one with many confusing components. As a holder of the quirk myself, having someone like me to guide you would help." "Okay." Toshinori continued to speak about one for all, going into great detail. This time around, exhaustion hit Midoriya like a wave, causing him to almost fall asleep. While sitting down, learning about quirks is Midoriya's thing, and he truly tried his best to stay awake. His attempts were futile, though, as he leaned against Toshinori's shoulder, which knocked him out instantly, the #1 hero looked at the vigilante with a soft smile on his face. It was nice to see him sleep, because it was clear that he barely slept for the past few days. As they sat side by side, Toshinori hummed a song that he was introduced to by a student. He never cared much for songs. Connecting with who he taught was the motivation for learning. Someone of his hands makes its way to Midoriya's hair, during it watching the green hair poke out from in between each finger. This is starting to get concerning. 𝐲𝐻's arms were full with bags, leaving him almost stumbling as he tried to take off his shoes. With a chuckle, Toshinori walks over to the underground hero, going down on his knees. He goes into muscle form, while he takes off both of 𝐲𝐻's shoes. After both shoes are off, he takes all the bags from 𝐲𝐻. He gives out a genuine smile toward him. 𝐲𝐻 rolls his eyes, breathing out to push away how touched he felt by Toshinori's action. "That was unnecessary. An apology for not noticing you." Walk in, Toshinori confessed, leaving the bags on the counter in the kitchen. Muscle form was necessary. You mean All Might? Yes, he was. Aizawa pouted, clearly annoyed. I'm not your damsel in distress, my damsel in distress. Toshinori coughs as he turns back into his normal bony form. When he realized the error in his ways, Aizawa blushed in embarrassment. You know what I mean by that, don't go twisting my words. This constant back and forth had been going on for a while between the two, but never went beyond light flirting. Sometimes Toshinori got the idea that it may be a mutual attraction. His hopes were crushed once again by Aizawa stopping it, as the number one he knew getting into a relationship was an incredibly stupid idea. Yet, whenever Toshinori was near him, every rational part of him died out each moment. They shared fueled the feelings that were confined in his chest, begging to be let free to lose all sensibility, and finally just let himself be with the man. A teacher, underground hero, and now a sort of father somehow that made him even more appealing. How did the conversation go, Toshinori? Aizawa asked while looking at the asleep kid on his couch. Toshinori began folding the clothes and other necessities Aizawa bought. It was fine, but he did fall asleep before I finished talking. You two are good now, I'm guessing. He blushes as he realized Aizawa was referring to Midoriya sleeping on him. Why, yes, good. You didn't tell young Midoriya your name? Toshinori added. Aizawa sighs, rubbing his fingers on the bridge of his nose. No, I haven't, have you? Is that why you're bringing this up? Accidentally. I'm not mad at you, more just mad at how I should have been the one to tell him, Aizawa informed sternly as he walked over to the vigilante. Midoriya's mouth was opened slightly, letting small breaths of air out. The men both found a smile creeping on their faces as they watched. What they swore to do a year ago had been accomplished. The safety of the vigilante Izuku Midoriya parenting something that was vastly out of their league. Even the number one hero knew little to nothing when it came to having a teenage son. But as he gazed upon the scene of Aizawa's eyes filling with love as he watched Midoriya, Toshinori knew that it didn't matter. He'd do everything in his power to keep his newfound family safe and well. After morphing into muscle form again, he carried his boy to the guest room's bed. When the door closed, the heroes let out a long sigh. The sun had already begun to rise, dark blue becoming lighter as the time passed. Aizawa turned to Toshinori with his eyebrow raised. Need a place to sleep. Making terrible decisions seemed to be the constant of the day. Everything that happened with Midoriya, and now offering to let Toshinori stay the night. These poor decisions were continuing to pile up. Eventually, they would have to topple over. What would be the final straw? Toshinori sleeping over in Aizawa's house. Midoriya already occupied the guest room, which left the only available room left to be his. To be respectful, Aizawa would obviously offer his own bed. Yet Toshinori being himself was the problem. You can take my bed. No, Aizawa. Aizawa uses his quirk, long black hair being lifted. Don't you dare sleep there, and I'll sleep in my sleeping bag. But no, Toshinori. Toshinori thought for a moment, finger on his chin, before his face lit up. How about we share the bed? Loud coughs of blood were followed by that suggestion, almost as if Toshinori himself didn't think he'd say that. Both of the heroes' faces were bright red at the thought of that level of intimacy. Familiarity and friendship didn't mean it wasn't still awkward to sleep next to someone else, especially when both fancied each other. They were oblivious to their mutual feelings. A water bottle was handed to Toshinori by Aizawa, who had somewhat calmed down by then. He wouldn't admit it to the man, but Aizawa wanted to sleep together, even if it meant nothing to the number one hero. Who could have whoever he desires, sure. Maybe it was Aizawa being delusional. It seemed that at that answer Toshinori's face brightened more than usual. Somehow had his feelings really turned him into a sap. Hizashi would roast the hell out of the underground hero for this one. With what little dignity Aizawa had left, he nodded and handed the number one hero some of his clothes. Apparently, it was borrowing clothes from Aizawa Day. They both went their separate ways to change into more comfortable, were then met back inside the room. Considering it was 4 a.m, barely any sleep was practically inevitable. Toshinori was the first to lay down on the bed. Aizawa unintentionally glared at where he laid. Toshinori chuckled awkwardly. Am I sleeping on your side? No, Aizawa scoffed, laying down beside him. Either way, it wouldn't matter what side you lay on. Oh. Aizawa rolled his eyes while turning his face away from Toshinori. Go to sleep, we have work tomorrow. Today, Toshinori corrected. You know what I meant, don't act smart with me. Aizawa gritted his teeth. Yes, sorry, sleep. Okay, good night, Aizawa, Toshinori whispered, facing Aizawa's back. Night, Toshinori, Aizawa mumbled in a sleepy tone. Energy flowed between the two. An unspoken tension of desire for the other's touch, to be near one another. As they feel one another's skin, Toshinori wore Aizawa's pajamas that were noticeably too small for the tall man. He let himself touch the fabric gently, mind going wild that he is wearing his clothes. When Aizawa had taken sight of Toshinori wearing something of his sleep was ripped away instantly on loop. Was the image of each other for both of the heroes alike. Slowly they moved closer to each other's bodies, looking for any kind of contact. As soon as Aizawa's back got flush onto Toshinori's chest, he wrapped his arms around the smaller man wordlessly. Nothing needed to be said. A new experience for the two, co-parenting with feelings attached. Catching your two caretakers sleeping together was not on Midoriya's bucket list. He will admit that willingly they weren't technically sleeping together in that sense. If they were, it'd make the whole situation much more awkward. Midoriya had woken up too early in the morning and snuck out of the guest room. Aizawa's door opened a crack. Curiosity got the best of the vigilante. Opening someone's door is invasive, but he just needed to know where they were. The house seemed vacant, with only the light sound of a fan filling the room. Two people who had no other options than sleeping next to one another. Nothing too weird about that, right? Upon further examination, Toshinori and Aizawa had been cuddling each other through the night. Maybe it was an accident. Definitely. Aizawa's eyes open up, using his quirk toward Midoriya, who, oh hey kid, hi Aizawa. Midoriya stutters as he not so subtly stares at Toshinori. A few moments of simply staring at each other. Aizawa speaks up again. He had nowhere to sleep. There's a couch. Nowhere to sleep, all right? Yes. Red covered the man's ears and face at being caught. Midoriya knew he was making excuses, so he just went along with it. He didn't know that his caretaker's relationship was like that. But granted, he wasn't there to know these things. Midoriya would have to ask later for more details of their interesting relationship. After a small bow goodbye, he leaves them be and watches some TV. Obviously, he'd chosen to watch the news, taking his notebook out to write in it. The notebook had two new things added. One on Eraserhead, and the other on All Might's pages. It read Crush on Eraserhead, Crush on All Might. And as everyone knows, Midoriya's analysis books are usually accurate. Suddenly Toshinori and Aizawa scramble out of the bedroom. Toshinori is on the phone. Meanwhile, Aizawa tries to hand him all of his things. After a moment of thinking, it pops into Midoriya's head. They had work. He glanced over at the clock on the wall that reads 6:35. By overhearing Aizawa's conversation on the phone, he learned more information about the two. Both men worked together at UA. He waited until the teacher remembered he was there. Toshinori smiled sheepishly at Midoriya. Young Midoriya, my apologies, but we must get going now. I can't go, Aizawa states while putting his things back. Someone needs to watch over Midoriya. I'll be fine. No, you won't. Now maybe we could ask Nezu if we could bring young Midoriya. I'm sure he'll understand after we explain the situation. Toshinori smiles reassuringly. Aizawa's deadpan expression doesn't change. Midoriya's eyes brighten in excitement. Really? Toshinori? Aizawa warns. Yes. Toshinori smirks. The vigilante averted his eyes somewhere else as Toshinori gave Aizawa a suggestive look. If there wasn't obvious sexual tension before, there sure was now. Midoriya was sure that at any moment they'd finally kiss. But as soon as it seemed like they would, Aizawa broke the gaze. Fine, we'll bring him along. Midoriya practically ran out the door with them. Then he was stopped. Change. He had forgotten he was still wearing the underground hero's clothes. Bakugo, along with the rest of class 1, were left puzzled. Not that he cared or anything, just out of pure curiosity. Aizawa and All Might haven't arrived on the UA grounds. Why? No one was sure. A small voice in his head said that it might be related to Midoriya. That thought was dismissed as soon as it came. No way had they got the pain in his life to actually receive help. Every classmate gave a guess to what could have possibly happened for them both not to be there. The thought Bakugo had kept resurfacing. No matter how hard he pulled it down, they all tried to stay calm until Yamada came in with a shout. Where's Sho? You do not know either where Mr. Aizawa is? Ida asks with lots of hand chops. Yamada's mouth goes agape. His favorite class doesn't know? I have a bad feeling about. Just then the door slams open. A tired man wearing all black entered the room. It was Aizawa. He sat down casually at his desk, With his usual deep sigh to start the day, each student, including the other teacher, shot glances at one another to see who would ask where he was. No one took the bait. After an annoyed grumble later, Bakugo decided to speak. "Where the hell were you? You're never a half hour late. Sho, are you okay?" Aizawa runs a hand through his unruly black hair. "I'm fine, working late on a case that's all life of an underground pro hero." He must have meant Midoriya. That case had to be Midoriya. Bakugo knew for a fact when he saw a piece of green hair on the underground hero's costume. Some would say he was too far to see it, but he knew that nerd enough to know his hair. With a sour expression, Bakugo walked up to Aizawa angrily and picked it off him. As he got closer, his suspicion was confirmed. The hair that he held in his hand was a perfect curl, a Midoriya curl. It wasn't weird to see the hair from his seat, or that he knew immediately whose hair it was. Maybe the real question was how Bakugo saw the hair. Technically, that'd be impossible for him and his poor sight. He blames his dad for that one. "Bakugo, are you going to sit down?" Aizawa squinted at the hair. "How did you even?" Bakugo whispered to the best of his ability. "Deku, huh? You got him. That nerd is safe? 'Cause if you laid a finger on him, then you're dead." "Midoriya is safe in my house." "Well, not currently. He is with Nezu right now." "Nezu?" Bakugo blurts out in shock. Kirishima walks over to Bakugo, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Bakubro, class is about to start." Fuming and furious, the blonde leaves the room on a mission, finding Midoriya to give him a piece of his mind. "Classmates of one," shouted Bakugo's name, attempting to chase him down. He didn't budge though, as he needed answers from the nerd. Whenever Bakugo's parents offered Midoriya a room in their house, he declined, yet somehow his hobo-looking teacher convinced him. Midoriya would have to trust Aizawa to be cared for by him. The Vigilante's trust issues weren't exactly a secret. What was so different about Aizawa? Did Bakugo lack something? He's the best. No way he could trust some stranger over a guy he practically grew up with, right? After long strides through the UA halls, he opens the door to the principal's office. "Oi, Deku." A puff of smoke came from the seat beside Midoriya, then appeared All Might. "Hello, young Bakugo. What brings you here?" Red eyes latched onto Midoriya, who no longer wore his vigilante clothes. He wore a cat shirt and matching joggers. Bakugo visibly cringed at how ridiculous he was dressed. After he's done with him, he'll burn the clothes right off him. Maybe even have a conversation with his teacher about how wearing cat clothes never looks good. How dorky could Midoriya be? Well, it went up about 5 on the scale that already is over 9,000. 𝐀𝐦. What are you doing here? Midoriya's green eyes are wide in confusion. "Yes." Nezu clasps his paws together. "Do you have something to discuss with us? Or a specific person in this room?" "You know damn right that I'm here for the nerd." All Might's normal smile strains. "Would you like to speak to young Bakugo, my boy?" Midoriya nods, light pink on his cheeks. "If that's all right." "Come on, we need to talk now." One of Bakugo's hands goes to grab his arm. Midoriya noticeably flinches. The two adults in the room must have seen it too, because he heard the screeching of a chair like someone was getting up. Atmosphere began to tense, making Bakugo leave faster into the empty hall. Most students by now were in their respective classes there. The two teenagers stood awkwardly as they waited for one to start a conversation. Midoriya sighed loudly, an annoyed tone present. "You bring me out here to just stare at me? What? Where the hell did this sass come from?" Bakugo gritted his teeth, his fists popping with explosions. He sees Midoriya flinch again before he continues. "So you decided to let some random bastard adopt you?" "Adopt? No way, you're that dense, Deku. That's basically what's happening. That means I'm staying with Aizawa forever." Midoriya's voice shakes anxiously. Guilt, a word not even in the blonde student's vocabulary. As he watched the body language of Midoriya, Bakugo felt it for the first time. Adoption might have been a strong word. That the vigilante wasn't mentally or emotionally prepared for brutal honesty would do Midoriya some good. But he was already too fragile. Maybe Bakugo jumped the gun with that specific word. According to the information he currently has, this life is new to him. No matter how upset the nerd looked at that moment, he seemed overall happier. Cats littered Midoriya's clothes, and despite its stupidity, it's slowly growing on him. Bakugo waved him off nonchalantly. "Nah, probably not. I doubt he could deal with you for the rest of his miserable life." "Thanks." Midoriya chuckles in confusion. Did you agree to this, or did he kidnap you or some crap like that? Kidnap? No. Why would Aizawa do that? Midoriya shouted. It echoed through the halls. Got him it, Deku. Stop being so loud. Bakugo replies with a shout. Midoriya sighs. Sorry. There's only so much of Midoriya that Bakugo could handle before losing his crap. Since you have found out about his bullying past, he was assigned to go to anger management. Did it actually help? Of course it did, fueling the ever-growing anger. Now Bakugo wasn't angry all the time. The emotion only filled 90% of his life. Any other emotion took up the 10% left over. If Bakugo from 2 years ago had seen him at current predicament, he would have scoffed. Deku the Vigilante 𝐀𝐦 being kidnapped and him learning patience to deal with all of it. Do you trust him? Do I trust Aizawa? Midoriya repeats slowly. Yeah. Midoriya ponders the question for a moment before nodding. No, God, could the Vigilante be any more confusing? No. Then Midoriya had to go on a tangent. I don't trust him, but I kinda do. We've been talking for a year, and I have to say that Aizawa is someone reliable, as you've said, though he is some random bastard. Sure, I guess that makes sense. Bakugo's lips form a smirk. And you cussed nerd, how'd your mom feel about that? Kaken. Midoriya dragged the N in the nickname, earning a small smile from the blonde. I'm telling her as soon as we see her again, because we will find her. Making such an intense promise is dumb, and Bakugo is logical. Yet he had faith that even if the authorities couldn't find her, he would without his mom. The loser would die of sadness based on some signs. Midoriya isn't mentally stable enough for one more tragedy. He hoped Aizawa treated him right. He needed to make sure he didn't swan dive off a building. Someone killing themselves is certainly something that Bakugo doesn't want in his conscience. Yep. Midoriya agreed, nodding vigorously, obvious doubt and lack of confidence in his reply. He brushed it off, mentioning, it would only make the situation worse. Last thing, Deku. Why was All Might in the room with you and Nezu? Midoriya nervously rubbed the back of his neck. Well, to All Might agreed to help take care of me. Apparently Aizawa asked him to, having your guardian be Aizawa and All Might. Living the life, huh? It's fantastic. They're both so kind and such admirable figures in my life. I hope I'm not too much of a bother to them. Midoriya rambles on, Bakugo nodding as he speaks. Annoyance of the needs rambling didn't seem to annoy him in a weird sense. Bakugo felt comforted by the words spewing out his mouth at high speeds. Every quirk Midoriya had, not the power kind of quirk, sent nostalgic waves to his heart. Weird feelings swirled throughout his body. Similar to the Vigilante's one for all that coursed through his veins. Seeing that Midoriya was now safe, Bakugo went into a calm state of mind. He was here, smiling, rambling, blushing, living whatever name this feeling had. He didn't want to know. Being blissfully unaware was the way to go about this. He is too emotionally constipated to deal with this. Midoriya made him feel too much all the time. Midoriya, her quirk's object attraction, along with one that enhances her physical abilities. Fans of her wondered how someone could possess two quirks. Her hero career was made possible by One for All. 𝐻𝐸 worked an office job in her early 20s for a hero company. Inner thoughts told her that becoming a hero was too out of reach. Object attraction isn't powerful or flashy. It's a lame, pointless power. All her life, she had been told things of that nature, belittled and bullied the one to save 𝐻𝐸 from this mundane, boring life she lived. Was N the holder of One for All at the time? By pure luck, they had bumped into each other during her work hours. He wore a cold expression. Yet that didn't stop 𝐻𝐸 from trying to converse with him. Lots of pestering. Later their relationship warmed up a bit. She would fight alongside N, and he eventually offered her a job as his sidekick. At the peak of their partnership, N and 𝐻𝐸 engaged in a battle with All for One. He assured her that everything would turn out fine. Later on proved the statement sorely wrong. All for One beat him until every word he spoke harmed him. Breathing became more overwhelming to endure and scarce. With the last of his energy, N pulled out a short black hair from his head. Eat this, please, 𝐻𝐸. 𝐻𝐸 knew her friend didn't joke at all, especially at times like these. Why? To take my quirk. One for All. One for All had been a discussion N had with 𝐻𝐸 early on. What it is, how it works, and the possibility of passing her the quirk if things went south. While fighting, he didn't explain what was needed to give away One for All. Now 𝐻𝐸 was enlightened of what is necessary. Hair of the user. You'll be fine, N. We can defeat him together. 𝐀𝐦's lower lip wobbled as tears rolled down her cheeks and scoffed. "I'm not giving up. It's called being a realist and preparing for the worst." Hesitantly, 𝐀𝐦 ate the hair that was handed to her and looked at her with slight pride in his eyes, as they slowly grew empty and dull tears morphed into a full-blown sob. She watched her friend die at the hands of All for One. The villain approaching her snapped 𝐀𝐦 out of the grief, causing her to run away at first instinct. Since that day, she's regretted not bringing his body with her to at least give N a proper funeral. Past actions couldn't be changed. Though this was his destiny, drastic changes of duo to solo heroism had hit 𝐀𝐦 hard. Life became lackluster and borderline depressing for the second time. Maybe she needed someone in her life to keep her busy, like a quirkless middle schooler whose energy and drive was one of a future hero. Great potential couldn't go to waste. 𝐀𝐦 became the teen's mentor without knowing a thing about teaching, an excitable and bright light, which his dream was to be a symbol of peace for this new quirkful world, to be a bright light in what darkness had birthed. Villainary Yagi Toshinori, her prized pupil nearing her 30s, 𝐀𝐦 decided to take a break from being a pro hero to have a child of her own. On a dating website, she came across this man named Hisashi. If there was one word to describe her husband, it would be bland. He worked overseas and barely had time for romantic gestures. Not like 𝐀𝐦 minded, though they both had busy lives. One was a sailor, the other a pro hero. Toshinori commented on multiple occasions how she could do better than marrying Hisashi. But by that time the knot was already tied. Many attempts at a baby later, she fell pregnant before 𝐀𝐦 told anyone. She realized Hisashi packed his things and left her husband, disappeared out of thin air. The pupil she had been teaching had very strong words for that man. It was mainly curses. "Toshi, sweetie, there's no need to make such a big fuss about this. I'll just raise my child on my own," 𝐀𝐦 insisted, while looking unsure herself. But Toshinori sputters in disbelief. "You can't be serious. Knock that bastard out cold. That's a little violent." "I know. I'm just really got him upset at Hisashi." 𝐀𝐦 waves her finger in disappointment. "I understand you're angry. I am as well. But you know how I feel about swearing." Toshinori sighs and takes out a small travel swear jar full of coins. He places a dime inside with a grumble. "Thank you, Toshi." She still treated Toshinori similar to a child. Even when he wore his hero costume that showed off the muscles he'd grown into. Now that he was a grown man and fighting crime on his own, 𝐀𝐦 rarely accompanied him. After passing off her quirk to him a few years back, he noticeably did not take this new quirk life for granted. It was unbelievable how this once quirkless high schooler became the symbol of peace in a matter of years. They grow up so fast that it brought tears to 𝐀𝐦's eyes. "Oh, you've grown up already," 𝐀𝐦 cried, her frame shaking with every tear. Toshinori, who had picking up traits of the woman, began to cry with her. He held her in his strong arms, rubbing 𝐀𝐦's back gently. On top of a building in the middle of the day, two heroes cried as they embraced each other. The day Izuku Midoriya was born brought great light to 𝐀𝐦 and Toshinori's lives. Hisashi leaving meant that her pupil would fill in that spot, sitting beside her with a comforting hand. 𝐀𝐦 would be able to bring a child into this world. Thoughts filled in her head at what quirk Izuku could potentially have. She silently hoped the power they'd wield wouldn't relate to their fathers. Having a constant reminder of the what-ifs, 𝐀𝐦 asked herself on a daily basis, would do more harm than good. Once everything finished, her biological baby being born, the doctor asked if Toshinori was her husband. Bright red blush filled both of their bodies at the assumption mentor and mentee, or even family, would describe their relationship better. When he needed a parental figure the most, their 𝐀𝐦 was. That's how it always goes for the pro heroes. Side by side with an unbreakable bond, 𝐀𝐦 wobbly smiles at the baby crying in her arms. "She's perfect." "You're always right, Nana." 𝐀𝐦. Home sweet home, at least it is for the time being. Most of Midoriya's day was spent in the principal's office, playing chess with Nezu as they sipped tea. Sometimes people he already knew would pop in to ask how he was doing. Aizawa, Toshinori, and twice Bakugo. Why didn't they trust him with the principal? Worrying about that was for another time, though he now had bigger fish to fry. For instance, the fact that Midoriya felt hungry and exhausted once Aizawa opened the door to his house. The two slumped into the couch, letting out a long sigh. Both turned their heads to look at each other. The vigilante and underground hero were more alike than they thought. Vigilante activities left him pretty drained. But this was a whole new level. Exhaustion from neglecting himself must finally have been catching up to Midoriya. It was about time, to be honest. I'm going to go to sleep, good night. No, you're not. And I'm not either. We'll be having 𝐻𝐸 over for dinner, so you better be awake. He's here to help take care of you after all. Are you sure he isn't here for you? Midoriya wiggles his eyebrows. If I'm not mistaken, earlier this morning he was undressing you with his eyes. Aizawa hid his face in his capture weapon. What are you talking about? Don't tell me you don't know. Know what? 𝐻𝐸 definitely fancies you, Midoriya states, matter-of-factly, face palming with a loud slap. Did that hurt? Midoriya nodded in response. Good, because you're being ridiculous, eyes widening in disbelief. Midoriya just shook his head. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The heroes literally slept together, not in that way, but still. You could sleep with your friend platonically. Gauging the underground hero's feelings from being blunt, it was obvious that it wasn't the case for Aizawa. After a year of knowing someone, you learn things. If 𝐻𝐸 is in his proximity, chances are he'll be checking him out, All Might form or not. From this day forward, Midoriya had assigned himself as their designated wingman. Love isn't something he had experience in. Maybe this would turn out to be a bad idea. It wouldn't be the first bad decision Midoriya made in his life. Gentle knocks come from the door. Aizawa curses under his breath. He strides to the door and opens it immediately. There stood 𝐻𝐸 with a big bag of groceries. A goofy smile on his face, he walked inside the house. Young Midoriya. Hello, Aizawa. 𝐻𝐸. Aizawa grumbles in response, closing the door behind him. Are you here to make us food? Midoriya shakes his hands excitedly. Aizawa takes the bag out of his hands. Apparently, I don't have actual food in my house. You don't. And I'm here to ensure the boy's safety. He can't drink coffee-flavored things for breakfast, lunch, and dinner like you do, 𝐻𝐸 said with disappointment. Especially those jelly pouches that don't even count as a full meal. 𝐻𝐸 opens the fridge to reveal an almost completely empty refrigerator. The only foods were jelly packets or coffee-flavored things, proving that he knew Aizawa well. He shook his head in disapproval as he stocked it with food. While he stocks the fridge, Aizawa comes up from behind him to place money in his hand. I don't want to owe you anything, take it. You don't have to. Take it. Both the heroes continue to bicker. The constant flirting gets to the point where Midoriya turns the TV on at an astronomically high volume, haphazardly throwing off his red shoes, causing them to hit a bookshelf in the corner of the living room. Everything became white noise as Midoriya's breathing picked up. He couldn't turn around in fear of the expression they wore. Did the vigilante already ruin his chances of a normal life? Lowering his head, Midoriya began to wipe the tears that suddenly streamed down the freckled cheeks. 𝐻𝐸 being the hero, he has wrapped both arms around the boy and into a warm hug. Aizawa stood there with concern in his eyes. The house was completely silent other than the news that was currently on blast. What's wrong, kid? Midoriya cries louder as he clings to 𝐻𝐸's shirt. I'm sorry, young Midoriya. It is fine that you knocked the books down. We can clean it up together. 𝐻𝐸 pulled away from the hug to give him a reassuring smile. For the first time, he finally broke All Might, the #1 hero who exceeded in anything he'd try. Yagi 𝐻𝐸, his civilian form, in which this rule did not apply. Comforting wasn't that hard to do when it came to a hurt citizen tending to their wounds and woes. Simple, repetitive, easy physical ailments could be fixed with ease. Possible mental-emotional problems, that's uncharted territory. He scanned the room until his eyes laid on Aizawa's. Without speaking, 𝐻𝐸 attempted to gesture that he needed help. The underground hero just responded with a confused shrug. Great, they are his caretakers, yet they can't even care for him. Being a hero proved redundant. At this particular moment, Midoriya needed therapy. And soon knocking a few books off a shelf could completely shatter this boy. 𝐀𝐸 would want her son to be protected. 𝐻𝐸 will try to be there in any way he can. My boy? How about you finish eating and go to bed? A sniffle comes from the vigilante. Okay. Awkwardly sitting at the kitchen counter, sitting on bar stools, while eating in silence, as silent as it could be considering the boy continued to cry. He realized how alike he is to 𝐀𝐸. A foggy memory of standing on a building crying into each other's arms came to 𝐻𝐸. Suddenly the urge to confess that he knew his mother was borderline overwhelming. But judging by how Midoriya was doing currently, he wouldn't be able to handle it. Heart against head in a battle of what would be best for the clearly not mentally stable boy beside him. Aizawa placed his plate into the dishwasher loudly, clearly trying to grasp their attention. Do you want to be alone? Toshinori watched as the gears turned in Midoriya's head until he responded, No, would you like to talk about what's wrong? No, how about a distraction? Toshinori chimed in as he grabbed their clean plates to put them inside the dishwasher as well. Midoriya nodded slightly, running to the guest room to come back moments later with a notebook in hand. The highly coveted hero analysis book that he spoke to Toshinori about during their training sessions. He held the notebook close to his chest as he set it on the coffee table, scooping up the remote with his hand. The news was on again with a reasonable amount of volume. Aizawa walked out of the living room, coming back with a laptop and a stack of papers. He handed half of the need-to-be graded papers to Toshinori. As they both sat down on one side of the boy, both UA teachers graded the assignments, while Midoriya wrote diligently in his hero analysis book. The news in the background became faint as a sense of calm came over them. If anyone were to see them now, they might be mistaken for a family which they happened to be forming. A voice cuts through the peaceful atmosphere created. Falling asleep is difficult for me most days. I rarely slept while looking for my mom, so it will be hard to break the habit. I understand, Aizawa informed. But it is getting late. If you want, I could have you take one of my sleeping pills. Okay, thanks, Aizawa. No problem, kid. Softness from the interaction warmed Toshinori's heart. Watching his coworker's stern and stoic soften to the vigilante made his stomach fill with a fluttering feeling. Knowing his boy would be staying with someone he trusted made him feel at ease. Midoriya is safe in the Aizawa household. Some part of him just wishes he could be here too, permanently sharing moments like these with Aizawa and Midoriya. Until the day he is no longer alive, he dismissed it as a selfish desire. Villains would target them both for associating themselves with the symbol of peace. No one deserved that life of fear. Toshinori's burden was his to carry alone. The dark reminders of what could be drifted away as a hand fell in his own, squeezing gently. Big green eyes stared as if trying to figure him out. Toshinori, are you okay? Of course, the vigilante noticed. It's nothing, my boy. How about we all get ready for bed? Aizawa's eye twitched, but he agreed nonetheless. Sure, Midoriya, go shower while I have a talk with Toshinori. Okay, Midoriya sends a wink to the both of them. Don't be too loud over there, Midoriya. Both adults reprimanded the boy, their faces completely red. Fine, I'm going. When the blush on their faces was quelled, Aizawa shoved his hands in his pocket with a sigh. I apologize for Midoriya's behavior. He did bring up a good point. What's wrong? Nothing that is of importance, Aizawa. No need to worry. Fine, don't say what's wrong. It's getting late anyway, and we have work tomorrow. Go home and get some rest after today. You definitely need it. Eye bags that seemed to darken by the end of the day proved Aizawa meant sleep for the both of them, probably projecting his own exhaustion. A quick check at the news displayed the time 11 o'clock, which was the time the train ran. He silently cursed as he started packing up at record speeds. The underground hero took note of this and checked the time too. Right as Toshinori held the doorknob to leave, Aizawa stopped him. Clearly the man wanted him to leave. Staying another night would be disrespectful, yet no matter how hard he turned the knob, it wouldn't open. Rough, calloused fingers held tightly on his warmth, emitting from the touch a fire that already existed in Toshinori's heart. Burned brighter through the mixture of emotions. He spoke slowly and quietly, yes. Aizawa turned his face towards himself, heat rising to both men's cheeks. I apologize for my poor hospitality. I didn't realize how late it was. You should stay the night. I insist. Flashbacks from waking up the other night flooded in Toshinori's head, laying so close that he could smell his shampoo, feel his muscles, and cuddle during the night. Another night of sleeping next to a coworker he developed feelings for wasn't logical, especially when Aizawa wore the tightest black shirt that had Toshinori practically foaming at the mouth. Not again could he allow this lust to control his mind. Too much respect would never allow the number one hero to openly ask for anything more from the other hero, when that's not what he's here for, providing Midoriya an environment to enjoy and grow. Assisting Aizawa while becoming closer, goals that wouldn't change purely off a simple desire, something Toshinori could suppress and ignore, for it may ruin everything. The family he never had. Toshinori sighed in defeat. Thank you, Aizawa, no problem. Similar to the night before, a dance became their situation. With more practice, it would improve and solidify. After Midoriya was done in the shower, Toshinori got dressed, brushed teeth, then collapsed onto Aizawa's bed. He hummed in bliss as the entire bed smelled of the underground hero, A large skinny hand lingered to the pillow before the man who plagued his thoughts was at the doorframe. Hair pulled back to reveal a rugged, attractive face that 𝐻𝐸𝐬 barely resisted, restraining himself from devouring the man's lips on entrance. "Keep your composure," he reminded himself. "Are you going to sleep?" "Currently swamped with work. I'm here because Midoriya wanted to speak to you, okay? But when we come back you should be in bed. It's too late to be grading," 𝐻𝐸𝐬 stated, not leaving any room for argument. Aizawa groaned. "I'm only saying yes because I know you would force me if I don't. Come on, let's go to the kid." Of course, immediately upon showing up at the doorframe of the guest room, Midoriya jumped and scrambled to sit against the backboard of the bed. The sleeping pill Aizawa offered on the nightstand beside his bed with a glass of water was used prior to them walking in. What 𝐻𝐸𝐬 had done for him today left him feeling guilty. He owed him an apology for the stunt he pulled. Midoriya needed to talk to the symbol of peace to clear the air. Was there any air to clear in the first place? No, but the vigilante believed it. Aizawa and 𝐻𝐸𝐬 stood side by side. Midoriya internally smirked at that. Being a wingman for the two wasn't expected. Sometimes things just happen. Maybe staying at Aizawa's house would be a good change. Two caretakers that are probably in love, an entire room to himself. The family Midoriya never had. Things were finally looking up for the vigilante. "Sorry about what happened." 𝐻𝐸𝐬 waved him off. "It's okay, my boy, there is no need to apologize. We are glad to be here to help." "You're always putting words in Aizawa's mouth." Midoriya squints his eyes in annoyance. "What he said is true though," Aizawa grumbles. "I do agree with Midoriya. He should hear this from me, not from you. You are ganging up on me now." 𝐻𝐸𝐬 jokingly frowns. Aizawa jabs him with his elbow. "We're serious." Midoriya giggles a bit. "We are kind of ganging up on you. What can I say? Aizawa and I make a good duo. I've heard Aizawa has kept me up to date with you." "Really?" The almost family continued their banter for an hour, eventually noticing Midoriya had fallen asleep during it. When he did, Aizawa tucked him into bed with a small smile plastered on his normally serious face. 𝐻𝐸𝐬 saw this and felt his heart skip a beat. According to what Aizawa said to him, his smile is reserved for those he deemed important. It felt like seeing the underground hero smile for the first time all over again. Without thinking, his large hand rested over Aizawa's smaller one that stayed holding the blanket. 𝐻𝐸𝐬's fingers laced behind his as they looked into each other's eyes. Just as they leaned in, lips so close their breath became one, 𝐻𝐸𝐬 kissed the man's cheek. Aizawa had pulled back from many almost intimate moments. Hopefully he'd understand he can't love a co-worker hero and close friend of his. Loving Aizawa would put both him and Midoriya in danger. Midoriya slept peacefully, unaware of the internal dilemma of one of his guardians. Sun shined through the windows of the principal's office, signs of it turning midday. Checker pieces placed on a checkerboard. The winner, to no one's surprise, was leaning toward Nezu. Some may find it pointless to continue losing to a genius with intelligence beyond compare. Midoriya saw it as a brain teaser. Not going to school meant his intellectual level decreased over time. Next to the board was a large stack of papers that the vigilante asked for. Education is important. He needed something to work on while easing back into a normal life. Both of his guardians tried to talk him out of it, but Midoriya is stubborn and wouldn't take no for an answer. He imagined how proud his mom would be at some of his choices. "Checkmate." Nezu squeaked the white chess piece in palm. Midoriya let out a long groan. "You won again." "I did indeed. You've improved immensely since the first time though." "Thanks, but you don't have to lie to me." Nezu cleared the board. "La? Now why would I do that, Midoriya?" "Because why else would you be telling me I did good when I clearly didn't?" Hatred, pure hatred, burned Midoriya's skin as the principal of UA, according to the vigilante, lied to him. Trust issues weren't anything new to him. When the subject was first brought up by 𝐀𝐦, he knew that those two words described him perfectly. Growing up bullied and beaten, no wonder Midoriya trusted no one other than his mom. Everyone in his life mistreated him one way or another. Before being born, his father left. His childhood best friend became his worst bully. Quirkless people, suicide rates were high. Midoriya knew all too well why it was ingrained in his brain that he was unlovable because of his quirklessness. "I see. Would you say that you do not trust me?" Midoriya nodded awkwardly. "Yeah, sorry." "No need to apologize." Nezu waved his paw dismissively. "How about 𝐻𝐸𝐬 or Aizawa? Would you say that you trust them?" Kekken asked me a similar question. Why is trusting someone so important? The answer is no, I don't trust Toshinori or Aizawa. At the worst possible time, Aizawa and Toshinori both stepped in for their lunch break to eat as a group jaw fell agape. As he stared at the heroes, Nedzu looked between the three of them, seeming to be amused by the scene. The school went quiet when the students were confined to the lunchroom. Midoriya's guardians heard him from outside the door. Once the staring contest had passed the 1-minute mark, Nedzu spoke up. Midoriya, how about you go to the lunchroom? I'd like to speak to Aizawa and Toshinori privately. Okay, Nedzu. Before leaving, 2 arms wrapped around his back into a hug. My boy, if anything happens, please come find us. He's not going to die in the lunchroom, Toshinori. Aizawa assured the worried man, whose words were quite fatherly. Not used to many hugs after his mom was kidnapped, Midoriya teared up without meaning to the adults in the room. All expressed a face of worry, confusion, and pity. How the vigilante, shattered easily by a hug, showed the broken boy within. He assured them that he was fine before retreating to the lunchroom in a hurry. Embarrassment was replaced with excitement when Midoriya realized he'd be able to see Bakugo again. Life has been so hectic that his only chance of talking to the blonde is visiting Toshinori, and Aizawa provided him with necessities. Bakugo provided everything else he needed that he wasn't comfortable talking about yet. A testosterone shot long overdue. Quietly walking through the UA halls, a certain feeling of dread settled in his stomach. When he neared the lunchroom, bad memories flooded Midoriya's mind, causing him to drown in fear. Aldera Middle School left mental and physical scars on him that would last a lifetime. Heart hammering in his chest, breathing going heavier by the second. The doors of the lunchroom seemed to taunt Midoriya as he leaned over against the wall. When did he become so sensitive? Never. When tracking down his mother did he ever feel like this, possibly because of how, when on the streets, there was no time to think, only find where 𝐀𝐦 could have been taken. Hello? Is there something wrong? A brown-haired girl squinted her eyes. Wait, why aren't you wearing a uniform? Midoriya's freak-out stopped as he stared at her, eyes wide with shock. It had been a while since he spoke to someone else his age, not including Bakugo. Hi. I'm Ochako Uraraka, and you are? Izuku. Midoriya. From behind her, a blue-haired boy pokes his head from the door. Nice to meet you, Midoriya. I haven't seen you around UA before. My name is 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐸. After the quick pleasantries, 𝐸𝐸 is pushed away by another student. That student had a familiar head of spiky hair and an explosive attitude. When their eyes met, the world went quiet. Uraraka and 𝐸𝐸 watched the pair in confusion. Moments later, yet another student joined the weird meeting. The red-haired boy wrapped his arm around Bakugo, knocking him out of a trance. As he scowled at the touch, Midoriya's heart fell into his stomach, watching how close the student was to Bakugo, his childhood friend. Bully. He's been gone too long that he's been replaced. Not that the vigilante and Bakugo were close in the first place, so that he could be replaced. The red-haired boy let Bakugo go from his grasp. Bakubro? Who's this? No one. Bakugo grits his teeth. Sorry, 𝐀𝐦, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's just that Nedzu told me he needed to talk to Toshinori and Aizawa. Which? Deku. Shut up. Midoriya covered his mouth when he realized the ramble that came out of his mouth. More importantly, he didn't know if saying their names would raise more suspicion with the students near them as suspected it did. You know Nedzu and Mr. Aizawa? 𝐀𝐦? Wait, who's Toshinori? Deku? Bakugo groaned, realizing he too revealed information that he probably shouldn't have before they could continue to bombard them with questions. He grabbed Midoriya's shoulder to drag him into the lunchroom. Today, he planned to have a normal school day, doing whatever was necessary, then sleeping at 8. Of course, his easygoing plans were foiled by the nerd. Now Bakugo had to do major damage control. He racked his brain on how he could possibly salvage this mistake. How would they react if faced with the truth? The entire group sat down at the Bakusquad table, which already sat Zero, Kaminari, and Ishido. When all the students were seated, Midoriya started the conversation. Hey, my name is Midoriya. I'm a visitor, not a student. How do you know Bakubro? I thought I heard you call him 𝐀𝐦. You two must be close. Kirishima flashed a smile. Midoriya's face went bright red in response. See, close? I wouldn't say that. We aren't close. Ishido waved off the scowling blonde dismissively. Don't mind him. Bakugo referred to you as Deku, 𝐸𝐸 stated poignantly. Does that mean you are that vigilante everyone has been making a ruckus about? Everyone's gaze latched onto Midoriya as he sank in his seat. Anxiously, he bites his nails to try and keep calm about it. His attention was focused on Bakugo. To silently ask him if he should tell them the truth, not because he trusted them, more so since he didn't have the best track record when it came to lying. One annoyed shrug later was all he needed to begin rambling again. I am the vigilante Deku. Back when we were kids, 𝐀𝐦 gave me that nickname, and I guess it kind of stuck. Aizawa was on my case, found me, then decided to take care of me. Toshinori is someone. Midoriya began to trail off, and then speak louder again. I didn't want to become a vigilante. I felt like I needed to after my mom was kidnapped by villains. Whoa man, that's tough. Zero huffed with sympathy. Bakugo rolled his eyes and added, he's a self-sacrificial nerd. How is being taken care of by Mr. Aizawa? Is he always super cold like he is in class? Kaminari snickers at the image of their homeroom teacher being domestic. Nope. I've known him for a year, and I think he's really kind. Anyway, Uraraka changes the subject back to Midoriya. Does that mean you're going to keep visiting? Midoriya nods. The rest of the lunch period went on similar to that. They'd ask Midoriya questions, and he'd answer without saying things he wasn't supposed to. All the attention on the nerd made Bakugo's blood boil. He didn't dwell on what these feelings meant, because why would he want to know? It didn't mean anything when he snarled as Midoriya blushed from Uraraka's comments. Not that Bakugo hated the round-checked girl, or anything. He didn't. When lunchtime finally ended, he snatched the nerd away to a secluded area to talk. After rummaging through his bag, he pulled out a bag of Midoriya's things. That morning he somehow knew he'd run into him at UA. Here, Bakugo shoved the bag to his chest, sighing loudly. We need to find an easier way for me to give you your crap. Thanks, 𝐀𝐦. Midoriya smiled. I don't have a phone yet, and I doubt 𝐴ll Might or Aizawa will get me one. I'd also feel bad for asking. Bakugo somewhat gently smacks Midoriya's head with a phone. You're lucky I've got a spare, Deku. You owe me. No, 𝐀𝐦, I couldn't possibly. Do you not want me to give you the shots? I won't if you don't want me to. Bakugo smirked, raising his eyebrow. Knowing that he won, Midoriya grumbled out a small, fine shots. Both boys froze, recognizing the bored voice laced with curiosity. Immediately, All Might stood beside All Might, awkwardly abnormal for a muscular form like his. Maybe the symbol of peace was squeamish with shots. Bakugo stifled a laugh at the thought of it. When he looked at Midoriya, he wore a terrified expression, so he came to the conclusion that his caretakers didn't know anything about his testosterone shots. While the nerd didn't lie to the students, he'd surely try to bend the truth with the adults, especially since he clearly admired the two. Bakugo ruffled Midoriya's hair as he bit his lip nervously. The nerd owed him after all he did for him today. None of your business. Aizawa's hair stood up angrily. None of my business. I think it is my business, if it pertains to Midoriya. Is he sick or something? 𝐀𝐦. None of your business, he repeated defensively. Young Bakugo, I hope you understand that Aizawa means well by this. He's concerned for the boy's well-being, and would like to know why he needs shots. All Might flinches as the word shots slips out his mouth. The hero definitely hates shots. Midoriya let his head fall to stare holes to the ground. Don't want to talk about it. I want to go back to Nezu. Midoriya, All Might, and Aizawa attempted to reprimand him, but he left to the principal's office without saying another word. Toshinori, Aizawa, and Bakugo stayed in silence for a bit. It wasn't his place to come out for Midoriya, yet leaving them in the dark about his gender was idiotic. He lived with these men now. After scanning both of their expressions, All Might noticeably had an epiphany. Trying to hide the face of understanding was fruitless. Bakugo quickly saw the changed demeanor on his face. Did All Might know the real reason why he used shots? Or was the symbol of peace taking an educated guess on why? Figuring out what he knew, there were two ways to go about it. The approach that Bakugo took was the blunt route. How do you know All Might? What? Aizawa's eyes fixated on All Might. What are you talking about? Bakugo hissed. You know Deku's got him secret, don't you? Why do you know when his other caretaker clearly doesn't? All Might. What is he talking about? All Might rubbed the nape of his neck. Well, wouldn't it be best if young Midoriya told us himself? Dodging the question, Bakugo began to walk to his next class. He probably won't tell you himself because the nerd doesn't trust you, both of you. With a bag lazily over his shoulder, Bakugo flees the scene. The tension was growing, and he didn't want to be there for it. Aizawa and Toshinori wordlessly walked side by side to their next class. Hearing that Midoriya didn't trust them for the second time that day hurt. Despite how illogical it would be to expect the Vigilante to immediately trust them, Nezu told both heroes about his trust issues, asking them politely to be patient with Midoriya. The underground hero had speculated Toshinori knew more than he let on. Aizawa didn't press for answers, though he had already waited a year to take care of the kid. Waiting wasn't anything new. Whatever this secret was clearly requires time. His guardian would patiently wait until Midoriya confesses the secret he harbored. Plates and papers littered the coffee table surface in front of the television. The Vigilante and UA teachers sat on the living room sofa. Since coming back to the Aizawa residence, no one brought up shots. Even when Toshinori came along before dinner to spend time with him, a small smile creeps Midoriya's face at this revaluation. The television was on yet muted per Aizawa's request, all in agreement to have a quiet, calming afternoon. While they were grading students' assignments, Midoriya noticed Aizawa's blinking, slowing down bags looking heavier under the underground hero's eyes. Wordlessly, he stood up and walked into the kitchen. Both heroes turned their heads with confusion evident on their faces. Young Midoriya. Give me a second. Midoriya scrambled through kitchen cabinets. Hey Aizawa. Where's your tea? Aizawa points toward a cabinet to the right of the sink. Over there if you wanted tea. I'm sure Toshinori would have made some for you. He quite literally offered you tea a few minutes ago. Yeah, but you and I both know his taste in tea is horrendous. It's not for me anyway. I know you hate most tea, but which tea do you hate the least out of these? Yogi tea. Aizawa sighs with light fondness. This isn't necessary though, kid. I've got work to do at the moment. Midoriya rolled his eyes. I didn't ask if it was necessary. A stifled laugh could be heard next to Aizawa. He found the box with yogi tea and began preparing the water by boiling it. Midoriya poured water inside, heating up the stove to 7. Unfamiliar with preparing tea, the Vigilante leaned against the counter while scrolling through his phone to wait. It hadn't been long enough since Midoriya was given the phone, so there wasn't much he could do. Thumb tracing the sides of the phone, he blushed at the gift given by Bakugo. Suddenly a large lanky figure stood in front of him. The Vigilante flinches as his gaze goes up to meet Toshinori's gaze with a strained smile. The symbol of peace gestures toward the kettle that had apparently been hissing, too busy in his own head. Midoriya didn't hear it. Sorry. Midoriya reached his hand out to grab the kettle, but his wrist was held back by another man. Don't touch, or you'll burn yourself. Aizawa was standing in the kitchen. Now too. Toshinori took the kettle off the stove and swiftly poured the water into a mug. He dropped a yogi tea bag into the steaming hot water. Here Aizawa, the underground hero, raises a brow. Thank you, I didn't know making tea was a team effort. No fair. How come you allowed Toshinori to grab a burning hot kettle with his bare hand? You're a kid, he's an adult. The tea's aroma filled the air, Aizawa taking small sips every few minutes after congregating to the living room again. The underground hero unmuted the television. As they all worked in a comfortable silence, Midoriya and Toshinori cleaned the coffee table's mess by washing dishes together, scrubbing, washing, and drying by hand. When the two finished, they began dragging Aizawa to his bed. One confiscated his capture weapon to ensure no injuries. The other grabbed his waist and shuffled inside his room, fist bumping after at their succession. Despite the groggily Aizawa's protests. I have to, Midoriya cut him off quickly. Take a break, right, Toshinori? Yes, I'll do your work for you since you're clearly too exhausted to. The hero nods with a thumbs up. Fine, Aizawa grumbles. But I have a shift today. You'll now need to wake me up because you decided to give me sleeping tea. Got it. And I just so happen to not be a morning person. Aizawa adds, smirking. Somehow that sentence caused the symbol of peace chuckle sheepishly, possibly knowing firsthand how Aizawa acts when awoken. Instead of scaring Midoriya, he was more intrigued than anything else. Upon looking at the comfortable bed he owned, the Vigilante yawned loudly. Based on their faces, he could assume that they were asking if he needed sleep too, shaking his head vigorously to deny the accusation with a hand on the bedroom door knob. Their Midoriya decided to make sure Aizawa was okay one last time. When he did, the underground hero patted the spot beside him on the bed hesitantly. He slowly sat on the edge of the bed. And after another gesture, Toshinori sat to Aizawa, inhaled and exhaled a few times before saying, "We need to talk." Watching the vigilante flinch at the words made Aizawa's expression soften. Midoriya's eyes darted around every inch of the room frantically. Nezu proposed a conversation with the vigilante to assure him that he was cared for by the looks of it. The kid is terrified of a conversation. Neither he nor Toshinori were any good at this parenting thing, only experiences being their students at UA. Running a hand through his hair as he sighed loudly. Aizawa sat up to face the two who were on the bed's edge. They moved closer to be seated fully on the bed with their legs crossed. He watched Toshinori's legs move around uncomfortably, tracing every inch of them with his eyes. After an awkward silence, Midoriya coughed to have Aizawa continue what needed to be said. The vigilante looked at him with knowing eyes, wiggling eyebrows causing the underground hero to blush. "We overheard you saying that you don't trust us, Midoriya." The kid flinched. "Not that we are angry or anything. I wanted to ask exactly why you believe we cannot be trusted." Midoriya ducked his head under the gaze. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "Does it have anything to do with young Bakugo's bullying?" Toshinori adds absent-mindedly. "I guess. But I'm not blaming 𝐀𝐦. No one has ever treated me nicely except my mom. So I'm pretty sure people are lying when they do. How could anyone actually like me, right?" Midoriya's laugh is cold and empty as he lays his head on the bed's backboard. Aizawa's hair raises slightly, but Toshinori pats it down for him. Bakugo has already been on thin ice. It wouldn't be too hard to break it and have him expelled. His teeth grind against one another as the symbol of peace speaks for him. "I certainly like you, my boy. That's one person. How about you, Aizawa?" Few deep breaths later. "Yes, I like you too. Why else would I have you living in my house? Keeping Bakugo at UA per your request, despite how much I'd love to expel his." Please calm yourself. Now isn't the time," Toshinori pleads, resting his hand on top of his. "Fine." What cut them off from the moment they shared was loud sobs next to them. Midoriya was crying into his hands. Immediately Toshinori rested his other hand on the vigilante's shoulder. Physical toughness wasn't something Aizawa had much experience with, yet he somehow found his hand going through Midoriya's green curls. The kid leaned into the touch. Every curl broke on impact with his fingers. Next time they'd teach him how to take care of his hair. For now, staying like this, Aizawa wished he could freeze frame this moment. Since Toshinori and Midoriya came into his life, he's found himself indulging in domestic behaviors. Maybe fatherhood wouldn't be too scary. "I will wait until you're ready to tell me why you need those shots. Even though I know that you already told Toshinori before me." Midoriya freezes, his head slowly lifting with anger and fear written on his face. "I never told Toshinori why I need those shots." Both sent a glare Toshinori's way. How would he know then? "Well," Toshinori sputtered. "I'm probably wrong anyway, so it doesn't matter. One terrible liar can recognize another." Despite how noticeably upset Midoriya is, he never left. Toshinori tried to fill the silence with small talk with Aizawa, talking about their day and what went on at UA. How Yamada broke a few glasses in the teacher's lounge. After getting more views on his radio show, Snipes plans to go to a shooting range while telling no one about his quirk. Weird lingo students of class 1 have adapted after spending too much time on the internet. More talking helped ease the tension which built up in Midoriya's shoulders. A loud chime made him shuffle through his pockets and fetch a phone. This phone both UA teachers were unaware of where it came from. "Where'd you get the phone?" "𝐀𝐦 gave it to me," Midoriya said casually as he typed on the phone. Toshinori's eyes widened. "Young Bakugo. I thought you two weren't close." "We aren't," Midoriya replies, a smile on his face. While typing something on the phone, Aizawa squints his eyes. "Is there something I'm missing about you two? You did talk about him a lot during our shifts together." Midoriya blushed bright red. "What? No. 𝐀𝐦 hates me, so there is nothing going on between us. If he didn't hate you, would there be something going on?" "No, I am attracted to men myself, so there is no need to feel unsafe here," Aizawa confesses, "as am I." The world came to a halt when the #1 hero admitted to liking other men, jaws going slack in utter shock. A sliver of hope filled Aizawa's heart before stomping it instantly. Assuming a hero as prestigious as All Might would ever go out with him is absurd. People had their own types. Aizawa doubted he would fit the Toshinori criteria of an attractive person. He probably dated or hooked up with hot supermodel men. His appearances were gruff And like he hadn't slept a year hoping for someone unnoticeable was illogical. Just because he liked men didn't mean he liked Aizawa. Yes, so there is no need. Obviously you two are gay. Midoriya gestured to the two of them. I don't feel uncomfortable talking about my feelings for 𝐀𝐦. It's more about how I know he'll never feel the same way. God, he could sympathize with the kid. Every moment spent with Toshinori felt like a pleasurable kind of torture, enjoying the time spent with the other hero, hurting from his desires. To touch, hold, kiss, and more that Aizawa dwelled on late at night, falling in love, was something the underground hero swore to never do again, especially after Shirakumo. Yet out of any candidate he chose who would never love him back. Maybe this was a form of self-harm. Become friends with the symbol of peace, fall in love. Then watch as he'll find someone better, a better man than Aizawa could ever be. You two should go on a date. What? Toshinori spat out blood, painting Aizawa's covers with red. Apologies, Aizawa. Aizawa groaned. It's fine, and kid, you're being absurd. Midoriya bats his eyelashes. But I'd be so happy if you did. Maybe I'll consider trusting you too. We won't be bribed if it will help, okay? 1:30 in the morning, Aizawa came back from a long shift, worrying out of his mind. Toshinori didn't hesitate to wrap his arms around the injured underground hero. Blood dripped onto the wooden floors. As he led him into the shower, staying over was new for their friendship. Now Toshinori wished he had slept over before. How many days did he come home like this? Alone in his house, as cared for his own wounds. He ran a hand through Aizawa's black, unruly hair, breaking knots with his fingers. Acting like a comb, Toshinori rummaged under the sink to pull out a first aid kit. Hesitantly, the man stripped himself of the ripped clothes he wore, toned body illuminated by the bathroom light. Red spread across both faces, the intimacy of the moment in acknowledgement. After admiring Aizawa, he cleared his throat. You're hurt, I noticed. Aizawa replied with a grunt. Ah, of course. Aizawa turned the tub on and began to wash his body with boxers still on. He felt long, rough fingers clean his wounds under the water, exhaustion hitting from the night. He leaned into Toshinori's touch and rested his head on the arm. A sudden memory popped into the underground hero's head. Were you serious about the date? Why wouldn't I be? Toshinori knew well enough why he had agreed. But he wasn't ready to tell Aizawa. He doesn't think he ever will be. You don't have to do this, Toshinori chuckled lightly, while turning the man's face toward him. I want to. Discussing the date ended with confirmation for one in the future. When both were ready, they headed off to Aizawa's bed. Spooning with no shame that night as they fell asleep, holding each other close until both bodies were flushed together, wishing for more times like these. Every worry seemed to disappear. Toshinori felt at ease with the hero in his arms. Breathing slowly, he planted a small kiss on his forehead and fell asleep with Aizawa against his chest. Little did they know Midoriya had seen the entire interaction between them. Waking up to the delicious smell of breakfast lessened Midoriya's hatred for the morning. He groggily stood up and stretched, preparing for the day planned yesterday. The vigilante begged Bakugo to spend time with him, so they could catch up, half for his own desire, the other half because Midoriya knew his caretakers were idiots when it came to love. How lovey-dovey they were made him sick. Toshinori had agreed on a date with Aizawa, but neither knew it was planned for today. Bakugo didn't know about Midoriya's plans to leave them alone to confess their feelings. Not seeming interested in it, yet agreeing nonetheless, taking his time, Midoriya prepared for the day, dressing up in an outfit that wouldn't embarrass him during the hangout with Bakugo. Brushing teeth and silently creeping into the kitchen, he heard both of his guardians keeping their voice down for Midoriya's sake. Heartwarming. He shook off the feeling of love growing attached to them. Would make it harder to leave when he eventually does. Deep in his thoughts, he walks and Midoriya immediately turns back around after noticing another intimate moment between the two. Aizawa, with his arms around Toshinori's back, head resting on his shoulder. A pang of jealousy from the physical affection shot the vigilante, but he ignored it and cleared his throat. Good morning, Aizawa and Toshinori. Oh, good morning to you too, young Midoriya. Toshinori blushed as Aizawa pulled away to sit in a chair. Aizawa grunts with pink, dusting his face. Clearly not a morning person either. Morning. Don't have me stop you. It seemed like you two were enjoying yourselves. Toshinori almost hacked out blood into the pan he had food in. Breakfast is ready. Breakfast was an American breakfast. Pancakes, eggs, and sausage. Luckily, neither Midoriya nor Aizawa minded it, similar to a normal family. They sat down at the counter's stools and ate together. The underground hero listened intently, nodding every once in a while during Toshinori's ranting. He then thought back to a UA student by the name of Kaminari. According to him, Aizawa's domesticity was out of character. That fact still felt unbelievable, which in turn piqued Midoriya's curiosity. Aizawa. I told Kaminari you were kind, and he acted shocked by it. Are you not like this at UA? Not like what? Aizawa sighs. Kaminari will get a piece of my mind. Toshinori hums while nodding. I understand what young Kaminari means by that. You aren't quite as soft. Because I'm not soft at all, Aizawa huffs as he grabs everyone's dirty plates, crossing his arms. The underground hero pouts for being a grown man. It was quite funny when Midoriya laughed. Aizawa turned to use his quirk and shut him up. Their banter picked up again, which made him feel more at home. The vigilante never felt safe or happy after his mom got kidnapped. Everything in Midoriya's life was looking up. He tried not to get his hopes up, though. By lowering expectations, they'd eventually grow sick of him. Everyone does. A phone ping snapped him away from an internal spiral. Deku, are you coming or what? 9 o'clock. Their meet-up time was nearing. Wrapped up conversing with Toshinori and Aizawa, he had completely forgotten. Typing quickly, Midoriya responded, yes. Sorry, I was busy talking to my caretakers. Bakugo replied instantly. Didn't ask. Hurry up. Are you texting young Bakugo? Toshinori raises a brow in interest. Midoriya's cheeks flush. Yes, I was wondering if I could. A phone rings loudly, saying the phrase "a phone call is here." As a ringtone, the symbol of peace fishes out his phone from the counter. He walks into another room and speaks quietly on the phone. Midoriya notices Aizawa's drastic change of expression and body language. He gestures for the vigilante to walk over to him, explaining what was going on. How Toshinori had been neglecting his duties as the number one to be there with them. It wasn't a surprise to Midoriya, since he assumed as much after never leaving both of the UA teachers' sides. But don't feel guilty about this, Aizawa assured. This isn't your fault. Toshinori wants to make sure you're here and okay. If he isn't doing his job as a pro, then that's his problem, nothing of importance to you. Guilt still settled at the bottom of Midoriya's stomach. But listen to Aizawa, my boy. He's right, Toshinori agrees. As he walks back into the room, Aizawa sighs. What did they say? They need me for an important mission that I obviously cannot talk about. I'll have to go. Will you two be fine? I'm sure I can handle the kid alone. Midoriya scratches his cheek nervously. Well, you won't have to, because Kaken and I plan to hang out today. Both guardians raise their eyebrows in a knowing manner. Okay, you never asked me if you could, but I'll allow it. Everyone in the house scrambled around to prepare for their respective tasks. Midoriya to meet up with Bakugo, Toshinori to be All Might, and Aizawa would probably sleep in once ready to leave. Both Toshinori and Midoriya are at the doorway. Aizawa, waiting to see them out, the symbol of peace, wraps an arm around the vigilante to pull him into a side hug. Midoriya brightens at the contact, dimming. When he pulls away, he walks over to the underground hero, instead running a hand through his hair. Aizawa sighs with the touch as Toshinori smiles warmly. Goodbye, Aizawa, I'll be home before you know it. Upon realization of how that sounded, he coughs some blood into a handkerchief. I mean I'll come to your home before you know it. Your home. For the first time, Midoriya watches Aizawa genuinely laugh at the man before him. All right. The park was empty for the most part. Some kids with their parents lingered nearby, but avoided Bakugo entirely. Which didn't come to a surprise after he threatened the people there to leave, because he had someone to talk to, that person who mostly got on Bakugo's nerves, especially when he was 15 minutes late. Despite the chances of Midoriya showing up were almost zero at that point, he still waited. He knew the nerd well enough to know that he wouldn't stand him up, not that this would be a date or anything of those sorts. Kaken. A figure running towards him shouts, I'm so sorry. Bakugo stands up from the bench he was sitting on. Deku, I know. Do you? I've been waiting here for 16 minutes. Bakugo snarled. Midoriya shrugged. You're still here though. And I was kind of busy wingmaning. Bakugo laughed hysterically, pointing a finger at Midoriya. You. The one who's never dated anyone. This is Rich. Who's more incompetent than you when it comes to love? You, Midoriya quips with a smirk. Also Aizawa and All Might, they are very bad at it too. Are you saying my teachers like each other? God, I didn't need to know that. You were the one who asked. Not by choice. Bakugo had to listen to Midoriya's ranting about All Might's and Aizawa's love life. They strolled around the park. He popped explosions when someone got too close. And he watched the nerd's mouth move as he spoke occasionally. He'd lick his lips and meet Bakugo's gaze, tension filling in the air that suffocated them. Midoriya's talking became white noise compared to the lips that moved so fluently. He wanted to kiss him, and didn't know why. Bakugo hated this feeling. Kaken, are you okay? Midoriya asked, a hand on his shoulder. He shrugged the hand off his shoulder. Nothing. You tell them why you need those shots yet? Nope, got him. Eventually you'll have to tell them, nerd. Bakugo groans in annoyance. Midoriya messes with the strings of his hoodie. I know I'm not ready though. Yeah, I get why. Aldera Junior High, not only quirkist but transphobic as well. Quirkless and trans wasn't ideal in that environment. Beat-ups from classmates became more severe. Despite hating his guts, Bakugo had enough and stopped those who hurt Midoriya for transphobic reasons. If they had a problem with his quirkless status, then he didn't intervene. A part of him regrets not defending the nerd from everything. That part of him considers Midoriya as a friend. Despite it all, their relationship now is more complicated than childhood best friends. Once hearing about 𝐀𝐦's kidnapping, his parents took Midoriya and living together for a few months until he disappeared. Red flags that weren't visible at the time. Before leaving the Bakugo's residence, he spent the entire day clinging to everyone in the house, showering them with love and affection. Bakugo wished that he noticed the signs. A year later, Midoriya is back from Vigilantism. Aizawa and All Might are good teachers. But if the nerd didn't trust them, then he didn't either. Live with my family again. Your mom would prefer you staying with someone she trusts. I can't, Bakugo scoffed. You can't? I actually like it there. Midoriya looks down to the ground apologetically. Sorry. You mean you won't? Are you starting to see Aizawa as your dad or some crap like that? The comment was met with a prolonged silence. Jackpot. When are you going to tell him you think that way? Bakugo asked, his voice going less gruff as he stopped walking abruptly. Midoriya turned his attention to the sky. Never. I couldn't do that to Aizawa or All Might. They want to help me, not be my parents. In response, Bakugo barked out a laugh. Not be your parents? Nah, they already are your parents. Darkness encapsulated the skies after a long day of work. Muscle form deteriorating back into the true form. Toshinori stands at the doorstep of Aizawa's home to apologize for not coming earlier. He bought a bouquet of flowers. Now, as he looks down at the flowers, he realizes the gesture is too romantic. A new change of clothing that fits Toshinori's new body along with the flowers. Anyone else who saw him probably thought he'd be going on a date. They did have a date planned someday, but today wasn't that day. Or so he thought. Doors slowly opened to reveal the man of his attraction and affection. Aizawa, crisp new clothing that left nothing for imagination. He had never seen the underground hero in an outfit tight-fitting before. Toshinori let his eyes wander the man before making eye contact. Maybe it was wishful thinking, but it looked as if Aizawa had been doing the same thing. You look handsome, Toshinori admitted, forgetting to filter what he says. Aizawa turns his head away to hide his red face. I could say the same about you, Toshinori. Midoriya bursts through the door behind him and smiles mischievously. Good, you're already dressed. Have fun. Not even having time to react, the door was slammed shut, and both guardians heard it lock. Apparently Midoriya chose to have the date today. The fact that the boy had so much control over them was scary. Remembering the bouquet in his hand, he gives it to Aizawa. A simple nod is the thanks Toshinori receives as they leave the house. Moments later, at the entrance of a bar he knows the underground hero frequently visits for logical sake. He started in the past because of how it is a walking distance from where he lives. Both heroes sat down in a booth farthest away from people. Once Aizawa and Toshinori had ordered drinks. The symbol of peace spoke. I didn't know it'd be today. Me neither, Aizawa grumbles. Apparently Midoriya gets to decide that for us. I suppose he does. He chuckles. How was work? Toshinori beamed. Wonderful. I fought villain after villain and came out victorious. Good, we have a kid, so we can't have you dying on us. Aizawa shrugs despite the implications of the sentence. Of course. Toshinori nods while taking a long sip of his drink, hiding his flustered face. For the most part, the date was filled with meaningless chatter. A year of knowing one another and working together made it harder to learn new things about one another. Aizawa chugged drinks down his throat. Toshinori wondered why something must be on his mind, that drunken courage was needed. Both guardians would take turns every 10 minutes to send Midoriya a text. Alone in Aizawa's home for the first day worried them greatly. Few drinks in the underground hero had loosened up enough to speak. Is anyone missing you at home? What do you mean by that, Aizawa? Aizawa slumps in the booth. Do you have a partner waiting for you at home? Blood splattered on the wooden table. They both reached out to grab napkins, fingers touching for a split second, as Toshinori sighed. No, I'm surprised. Your All Might, surely men and women alike have fallen for you, Aizawa stated matter-of-factly. Yes, but they liked All Might, not Toshinori. They were mostly one-night stands anyway. If I did like someone, Toshinori laughed dryly, I wouldn't want to put them in harm's way. Aizawa hummed, one-night stands. So the rumors were true. Indeed, with the bill paid, and Aizawa drunk, Toshinori held him from falling face first into the concrete unoccupied arm. Holding the bouquet tightly, he offered to change to All Might to carry him home. But the other man refused. Even when drinks were in his system, the underground hero refused to be helped. Maybe Toshinori could bring that up later in front of the front door. They silently stood, tension building as wind swayed Aizawa's dark hair. The urge to run his hand through the man's hair was interrupted, much to Toshinori's surprise. Aizawa had placed a hand on his waist, whole body going hot. He tried to push down the desire to kiss the underground hero. Kissing after their date wasn't what Midoriya planned. This whole scheme's purpose is teasing the two for doing semi-romantic things. Did Toshinori like his coworker? Yes. But that meant nothing because he wouldn't act on it. Apparently Aizawa, with both arms, trapped Toshinori against the door. Deep breaths, smelling of alcohol, hitting his face. A dark rumble comes from Aizawa, licking lips hungrily. Can I kiss you? What? Aizawa, don't tease me. Toshinori shifted under the gaze of lust being directed towards him. Please think this through. I have, and I want to do this. Then, not knowing who started, they were kissing. Aizawa's kiss had no chaste in it, deepening as their lips moved together. Toshinori didn't realize what he had been missing out on until the man's tongue went between his lips. The underground hero was a good kisser. Even with a mouth tasting of pure alcohol, too good of a kisser that small noises of pleasure escaped Toshinori that weren't very plus ultra. Continuing their makeout session, even inside Aizawa's house. Thankfully, Midoriya texted them both that by the time they'd be home, he'll be asleep. Led into the bedroom as Aizawa began stripping himself of his clothes, Toshinori rested large hands on the hero's chest, hard on, begging to finish what had started. As he pulled away, Aizawa, Shouta, Aizawa snarled in his usual sober manner. What is it? Toshinori shook his head. My apologies, Shouta, I cannot let this go any further. We may talk about it tomorrow morning. Good night, and get some rest. The underground hero let Toshinori leave without saying a word. A green-haired boy poked his head out the guest bedroom and smiled after shaking his head side to side. Midoriya nodded, leaving him alone. Tonight it didn't feel appropriate to sleep at their house with a heavy heart, the symbol of peace. Left all in all, any progress is good progress. And Midoriya was a great wingman. Gray curtains covered the windows in the guest room. Another day visiting Yua. And naturally Midoriya was looking forward to it. Every student and teacher treated him kindly despite his past vigilante status being near those closest to him. Bakugo, Aizawa, Toshinori, and Nezu. Over time, Midoriya found himself feeling secure in the new environment. Normality continued to make him feel uneasy, though after never staying still for so long it's hard to dive back into it. In an attempt to distract himself from the thoughts, Midoriya prepped for the new day. Once dressed, he strolled through the house, sitting in the kitchen to eat a quick meal before noticing Aizawa, who clearly had a hangover. A terrible one at that. Midoriya wasn't sure how much the underground hero drank that night. It must have been a lot. From the moment he woke, his guardian groaned loudly at the headaches irritating his head. Offering and asking to help proved pointless each time, insisting that he had dealt with worse before. Despite his assurance, Aizawa looked worse than usual since last night. Midoriya hadn't heard from Toshinori. Every message was left unsent, pissing off the vigilante. At least it was time for work, which obligated the UA teachers to speak. He wondered if he even knew what went down on their date, because not even he knew. When Midoriya woke up, Toshinori had already been leaving. He felt guilty for being nosy, but the suspense was killing him. Blurting out quickly, he said, What happened last night? Aizawa sipped his first cup of coffee, a tired expression. What do you mean? Didn't something happen between you and Toshinori? Worst case scenario. Aizawa happened to get too drunk to remember. No worries of the worst case scenario were right. Playing dumb all day would be difficult in the long run. It lying to Midoriya while the kid had obvious trust issues wasn't ideal. Yet Aizawa spoke before thinking, which was frankly a first. Maybe his subconscious knew the possibility of being asked for details would be high. He wasn't a lightweight. Completely sober by the time he almost slept, with Toshinori swearing that it must have been a wet dream, as Aizawa couldn't believe the possibility of attraction being mutual. If it were, that didn't change what the #1 hero told him: he doesn't date, hence why he lured Toshinori into his bedroom, not having him romantically hurt. But if a one-night stand is what he'd get, then the underground hero would understand anything to have a more intimate relationship with the man. That thinking caused very strong words from his friends Yamada and Kayama. You almost slept with All Might, both shouted in unison. Draws a gape, Aizawa hissed. I almost did, so it means nothing. Quiet down before people overhear you too. They'd absolutely love to overhear this juicy drama, Kayama protested with a pout. That is exactly why I didn't want to tell anyone about whatever transpired last night. Yamada slung his arm around Aizawa. Then why are you telling us, my man? Because asking for help felt shameful. But this entire situation left him more exhausted. I need your help, Shu. Asking for our help. Oh my. Yamada pretends to faint on the floor, Kayama fanning him with her hand. All the underground hero could do was roll his eyes at the scene. Thankfully, the teacher's lounge is vacant, except for the three. Aizawa turns to walk away after realizing his friends wouldn't be much help before his hand could reach the doorknob. A familiar tall, lanky blonde came in. Their bodies clashed into each other, causing Aizawa to lose his balance. Long arms slipped around his waist, keeping him steady. Are you all right, 𝐲𝐸? Toshinori sputtered. I mean Aizawa. Instead of responding, the underground hero grunts. Toshinori removes the arm around him, having it rest on the nape of his neck. Sorry. I already told you to stop saying sorry. Few months prior, when their friendship was fresh and new, apologizing for everything and anything in the beginning, Aizawa tried to ignore it. Tried being the key word, as it became annoying quickly. Some days he'd find himself wondering why Toshinori always felt the need to apologize. What does he feel guilty about? One day Aizawa had enough, demanding the symbol of peace. To say anything else, the man resorted to a "my apologies," instead making him feel somewhat better. My apologies. Toshinori stared at the ground, fiddling with his thumbs. I don't mind you calling me 𝐲𝐸. Aizawa remembers to play dumb. Don't know why you would want to, but it's fine. You don't know why. Oh, disappointment in Toshinori's voice is obvious to Aizawa. Disregarding last night would be logical. A part of Aizawa didn't want to, after causing pain to the older man. The day went by as any usual day would for Aizawa. Despite the awkward tension between him and Toshinori, the man acted casual. They didn't talk much during school time, but that was to be expected from a teacher at UA. Laughing and conversing with other co-workers in the lounge, a prickle of something went down his spine. Attention seeking the one who gave it to him willingly. Toshinori. Surely the #1 wouldn't mind if Aizawa happened to walk in or notice him sitting close by to eavesdrop. Going out for drinks from time to time is their way of spending time with one another. After school on a stress-filled day, a way to unwind and let loose most times. Toshinori asked the questions, therefore leading the entire conversation. He didn't mind this, neither did Aizawa. But he wanted to learn more. Rants holding no value if the man didn't get vulnerable. News reporters taught him to be that way. Aizawa didn't like that All Might-esque way of speech. My weekend was something special. I went back on patrol. Toshinori smiled and looked strained in a way only the underground hero recognized. Oh really? Kayama purred. Anything interesting happens that you'd like to share with the class? Just taking care of young Midoriya. Toshinori's eyes shot to Aizawa, and they both blushed at the question. He'd tie up Kayama in anger, but she'd probably enjoy that. 13 raised a finger. You're helping a racer with Midoriya even on weekends? Why yes, I care a lot for the boy and am making sure he is well, always looking out for others, even for our buddy Shu. Hisashi smacks his arm, wiggling his eyebrows toward Aizawa. Whenever the underground hero thought they'd stop talking, they'd continue learning more about his co-workers without having to initiate. Yamada and Kayama made their relationship official on Friday. Instead of being friends with benefits, Kayama and 13 took up a pottery class together. Toshinori saved a cat from a tree, showing off pictures to everyone including Aizawa. He hummed to show his appreciation for the cute cat photo. I took a picture because the cat reminded me of you. Toshinori showed off a black-haired cat with long fur, its face paired with a grumpy face structure. He understood why. It's cute. Acting casual about making out with your coworker was harder than expected. Not even the likes of the #1 hero could act completely unbothered. Aizawa appeared the same Toshinori already suspected. He didn't remember after not knowing why he wanted to refer to him as Shouta. First name basis had less meaning when someone agreed to it, begrudgingly focusing on teaching. When all he could think of was Aizawa's lips against his, was hard. Attraction for the man grew by the day, and Toshinori could barely contain himself, pulled back by worries and doubts. Broken up, harmed body, which betrayed him. Toshinori winced, gripping his side tightly. Each cough painted his handkerchief, worn out by overusing his quirk with Sundays fighting the injury sustained from all for one burned like it was recent. Years passing didn't ease the pain engulfing Toshinori's pathetic new body. It didn't make him forget that his end is near. No one could ever love him as Yagi Toshinori. Then, as if the day couldn't get any worse, "We are under attack. The 𝐴𝐡𝐤 is under attack." Instantly his form changed to All Might, walking out and meeting Ida, students' eyes frantic, while filling him in on what went down, scooping Ida into his arms to waste less time. Adrenaline taking control. The symbol of peace was there in mere minutes. The scene looked borderline horrific, a mob of villains terrorizing young heroes in training. And the teachers halfway to death's door, specifically Eraserhead, was lying on the ground with a pool of his own blood, beaten by something the villains referred to as a Namu. All Might could care less about their names. A large, muscled arm wraps around Eraserhead, holding him bridal style. His heart shattered at the slowed breathing of the injured man. All Might will never forgive himself for what pain he's caused him. Led by Shigaraki, the villains fought until laying eyes on a boy familiar considering his quirk was along the lines of super strength. Green hair sprouted out his head, and the villain pointed a crusty finger towards it. Others nodded, setting a new target. Instead of All Might, All for One would be okay regardless of which one for all user they brought in, adding to their collection, which currently contained one Inko. Midoriya signaling Kurogiri to create some portals for their escape. Midoriya sent a kick to Shigaraki's face. Oh, he rubbed his cheek. What was that for? You're working for All for One, aren't you? He kidnapped my mom. Give her back. Midoriya snarled, channeling his quirk throughout his entire body. Shigaraki shrugged. Tough luck, kid. But you won't get Inko back. She has the embers of a quirk that holds much value to my master. I don't care why you need her. If you won't set her free, then I'll do it myself. Midoriya stomps in the direction of a portal. Help for the heroes came through the 𝐴𝐡𝐤 doors. Most villains by now had retreated back to their hideout. Time ran thin. Shigaraki didn't have much time left for chit-chat with Midoriya. By the looks of it, he wouldn't need to do anything. The vigilante willingly walked into the portal wordlessly. Hollers and protest came from those who apparently knew him. Students and teachers called out to him. Shigaraki noticed a special relationship between three of those people when it came to Midoriya. Eraserhead, although almost unconscious, fought back his heavy eyes and shouted. Tears welled up the tired eyes from physical pain or emotional pain. He didn't know the difference. Working hard to keep Midoriya safe meant nothing. What kind of guardian couldn't save a kid? Flashbacks of Shirakumo bubbled in Eraserhead's mind, leaving his stomach churning. He clings onto the safe, strong arms holding him, voice hoarse. Forget about me, save our kid. All Might's blue eyes went aflame with determination at his words. He caressed Eraserhead's face before the man passes out. Doing as instructed, the symbol of peace places him with someone else and launches toward Midoriya, a hand outstretched inches away from grabbing the boy's clothes, screaming his name just like the 𝐴𝐡𝐤 attack. All Might was too late, falling to his knees in defeat and disappointment as tears threatened to fall. I'm sorry, so sorry, my boy. Bakugo watched the scene unfold with his childhood friend's guardian's fist curling to a fist, while the ground beneath him explodes. Having control over his own quirk was something Bakugo took pride in. Now Midoriya left again, And he couldn't do this anymore. The chance he'd come back in one piece was slim. All the work trying to keep the nerd safe had been for nothing, dying before he'd even be able to properly apologize to him. Blunt nails digging at the blonde's own worn-out wrist. Crap. Midoriya had gone through one of Kurogiri's portals, while not hearing what any of them had said, dropped on the floor of an abandoned bar, surrounded by more villains. Various other villains shifted their gaze to the vigilante. Before attacking them, his eyes went wide in shock. Midoriya, chained to a chair with various scars, his hands shook uncontrollably in fear of what pain his mother had undergone. "Izuku, baby, why are you?" Joy from seeing her son after a year had been short-lived. A traitor informed the League of Villains about her son being seen in 𝐬𝐻𝐻's Ember of One for All barely lit inside her. They now searched for more recent users of the quirk to take it from Midoriya. Left alone to fend for himself, sweat fell off his face as 𝐬𝐻𝐻 teared up at the sight. Midoriya's death loomed near, and her son's blood would be on her hands, waking up to the same confines and chair as the day prior, growing accustomed to her new life. The distinct difference this time, 𝐬𝐻𝐻's son right beside her, similar to her self-constraints keeping Midoriya in the bar. Surrounding them was the League of Villains, Toga twice, and Mr. Compress playing cards on the couch. Kurogiri serves drinks to Shigaraki and 𝗵𝗲𝗍 as they sit on a barstool. Casual chatter almost made it seem like they weren't a group of villains who had it out for the Midoriyas. Even if their reunion wasn't ideal, 𝐬𝐻𝐻 felt glad to see Midoriya. Logically speaking, she knew this might be the last time they share the same space. Breathing the same air, only one could get out alive. Stirring in the uncomfortable chair, 𝐬𝐻𝐻 kicked the other one. Midoriya jolted awake at the sudden motion. All the villains caught the interaction, staring in confusion. The League of Villains pulled up chairs to create a meeting circle beside them, a screen propped up against the wall. Once 𝗵𝗲𝗍 clicks it on, a deep voice rings through the bar. All for One displayed on the screen smiles eerily wide. "Hello Midoriyas, how have you settled into our quaint bar over there? Any particular complaints?" Midoriya fully awakens and seethes at the words. "Yeah, I have got complaints. Like, I don't know the fact that you kidnapped my mom. Then you decided to annoy me for a year and try to murder me." "I suppose we did do that," Shigaraki shrugs. "Now boss, what's next? We have 2/3 of the One for All users, will they be enough?" "You've got the exact one I needed," Toga smirks, running a knife along Midoriya's jawline. "So, we're going to cut this pretty boy up?" "No, not yet." "Yes, kill him," twice states in two distinct voices. "Settle down, I'd like to ask him something, Deku. Or should I call you Izuku?" "Don't ever call me Izuku, Deku is fine." All for One smirks. Yes, Izuku, how much do you value your family?" Her son visibly tenses at the word family. Having a father out of the picture didn't leave much to threaten. Before 𝐬𝐻𝐻 could ask about what he meant, a photo appeared on screen. Two men, one blonde, the other black-haired, sitting in the car with Midoriya in the back seat. It did occur to his mom that there was a possibility of finding a new home. But her stomach sank nonetheless. She missed her son and wanted to be the one to share those moments with. On the bright side, Midoriya found a home, which would make this much less difficult. "Kill me." Despite the lack of facial features, All for One seemed to light up at the words she uttered. Giving up wasn't what 𝐬𝐻𝐻 had in mind. If the only way to protect her son and the world is to die, then so be it. One for All passed on to the wrong person would cause chaos. As the mentor of a symbol, she'd take her lessons and apply them. Selflessness came naturally to heroes after all. "I want you to kill me. I serve no purpose to you, do I?" All for One chuckles. "Heroes and their self-sacrificing tendencies, you're aware of exactly why I need you, so you'd rather choose death. An interesting angle. I'm impressed. And Mom, please, stop, don't say stuff like that, take that back." Midoriya's scarred arms trembled as he tugged at the quirk, stopping restraints, tears threatening to fall, eyes watery and full of sorrow, continuing to plead and beg for 𝐬𝐻𝐻 to take her statement back. The vigilante's mom stayed tight-lipped. From the harsh movements, one of the villains held him back with their 4 fingers, the 5th finger hovering tauntingly. "Keep still, or you'll be the one turned to dust," Shigaraki threatens with a hiss. 𝐬𝐻𝐻's remains of All for One course through her. "Let go of my son. What are you going to do about it? You've been stuck here for a year, and now decide to fight back. Pathetic." Mother adrenaline fuels 𝐬𝐻𝐻's leftover power. more causing her to finally break free. Large green eyes burning with fury and rage, deep breaths filled the room from both members of the family, one fearing for his life, the other ready to end a life. In no time 𝐀𝐻 had broken free. Standing at the center of the bar, her hand balled up into a tight fist that sparked with power, running toward Shigaraki and knocking him to the floor. After a singular punch, the League of Villains charged the retired hero, all at once, hand outstretched, quirks ablaze, meticulously dodging every blow until she feels a wispy hand holding her wrist, Shigaraki holding her other. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Shigaraki smirks while moving his hand over 𝐀𝐻's face, using only 4 fingers. "Mom, stop. I'll have your son watch as you disintegrate right in front of him, becoming complete dust by my hand, please. Then Deku would have to pass one for all to all for one. Isn't that right?" "Stop." Midoriya sobs, tears streaming down his face. Shigaraki's entire hand, 5 fingers, and all came in contact with her face. Everyone at the bar watches 𝐀𝐻's pale skin turn into dust right before their eyes. Distantly, she hears her son for one last time saying, "I love you, Vision," and hearing now impaired, indicating almost complete demolition of her face. Through 𝐀𝐻's own eyes, she could see them become dust. Her body ached as a new wave of power shot through her. Yet this one worked, quickly disintegrating arms, legs, body, until the very feet she'd stood turned to nothing. In her last moment of coherent thinking, 𝐀𝐻 had one thought racing through her mind: "I'm sorry, Izuku." Eyes wide and unblinking, while Midoriya looked at the dust pile, his mother had become apparently blacking out right after, because when he opened his eyes again, the chair that held him down was forgotten. From the corner of his eye, Midoriya saw a content smirk on All For One, noticeably pleased at the turn of events which transpired. Soon after that, his legs gave out and he collapsed. Both hands were firm on the floor to keep him steady. He screamed a blood-curdling scream, while a pool of his own tears began to form beneath him. No denying what Midoriya had witnessed, no stage of denial. Memories of moments he shared alongside 𝐀𝐻 caused his heart to clench. Midoriya failed as a hero and son. A menacing laugh came from the screen attached to the wall. "Are you willing to reconsider giving me your quirk? Or shall I kill All Might and Eraserhead too?" "No, and no, God, please no." Midoriya trembles as he slowly stands up. "Don't kill them too." "Then you know what you must do." Mr. Compress speaks, a marble dancing between his fingers. Shigaraki flashes a large grin. "What would it be, Deku?" Heartbeat beating loudly enough to hear in his own ears. Midoriya needed to leave to escape, regretting the days he spent with Aizawa. Since now he was being targeted, where would the vigilante even go? Back to vigilantism and on the run. To protect the only remaining people he loved, that course of action was ideal. A small voice in his head disagreed, though, telling Midoriya that he couldn't leave home. He didn't realize when it became home, word fitting into the vigilante's mind perfectly like it belonged. Conflicting emotions infected his mind, accompanied by a banging headache. Shadowy figures arose before Midoriya, talking amongst themselves. His surroundings dark and ominous. Every time he attempted to speak, the words never came out. He hyperventilated at the whirlwind of feelings until his eyes shot open. Midoriya didn't remember ever closing them to begin with. A building ledge he grew fond of after meeting Aizawa, their meetup place. Nostalgia hit him. While he went to sit down days without going here, he began missing the wind in his hair, freedom of vigilantism back. Then his life had purpose. Finding his mother gave him the drive to survive. Without 𝐀𝐻, he had no life. He ugly cried openly on the roof he spent a year at. Longing for motherly love. Why run when there's no point in living anymore? Gazing at the dark night sky, a shaky exhale coming out his mouth. The building, one of the highest in the area, stood above everything. People walked by, living their normal lives. No one would ever comprehend the hardships Midoriya faced. If someone could help his case, then they could. Yet no one did. He was broken beyond repair, a problem everyone despised, someone better off dead. That's what the vigilante was thinking as he jumped off the building and felt a familiar capture weapon wrapped around his waist. Bright white overhead lights surrounded by white walls. A full body cast the same color covering Aizawa's destroyed body. Guest chairs pushed against the walls except for one. Toshinori's chair pulled to his bedside, eyes slowly opening to watch the man who slept beside him, his large hand intertwined with Aizawa's own. The touch burns his hand and heart, causing the underground hero to pull away slowly. Toshinori stirs awake As he looks up at him one small smile later, Toshinori dug his face into Aizawa's shoulder. Whimpers came from the number one as he wet the cast. Aizawa winced at the pressure on his injured body. Toshinori bounced back. My apologies, Aizawa. I didn't mean to hurt you. Not your fault. Noticing the leftover wetness in his eyes, Toshinori wipes them clean, then moving that same hand to run through the underground hero's hair fingers, breaking each knot that accumulated in the night spent at the hospital. Worry lines scrunched, while taking in Aizawa's destroyed frame before guilt could consume him. A gruff voice soothed Toshinori. Said it's not your fault for everything. Toshinori's voice is small and pleading. Aizawa repeated, for everything. Young Midoriya. I couldn't get to him in time. Everything includes that as well. Toshinori, the vigilante known for going face first into danger, didn't surprise his guardians, dedicating a year and more of his life to finding 𝐻𝐻𝐻. But that didn't make them feel any better about this situation. Their boy kid son staying in the base of villains. Who knows what they'd do to their poor Midoriya, who'd already been through enough. How much more mental, emotional, and physical torture would he face? Aizawa hissed at the onslaught of thoughts. Toshinori sniffled, while trying to comfort the other, none seeming capable of dealing with their loss. Just yet, not that they had lost anything. They'd never lose Midoriya again. Toshinori let his head fall to the corner of the hospital bed. What do we do now? Find him, clearly. Toshinori sighs sadly. But how? By then will he even be? Aizawa grunted. Don't think that way. As soon as I can, we'll leave to find the kid together. I don't think that's a good idea, Aizawa. You're in a full body cast. Is that supposed to mean anything? I'm finding him regardless of how injured I may be. Aizawa attempted to shrug the sharp pain, stopping him from doing so. True to his word, a few hours later Aizawa and Toshinori became Eraserhead, and All Might Tsukachi collaborated with other detectives to find the League of Villains as soon as possible, slightly out of fear, after the heroes demanded their help with a furious glint in their eyes. Terrified, more people joined the case of the Midoriyas. By the second day, they had a pretty concrete lead to their home base, an abandoned bar that wasn't quite abandoned, the League of Villains base, which held captive two Midoriyas. A puff of smoke appears that All Might emerges from. Eraserhead stood right beside him near the villains' hideout. Cold air moved their hair with the moon center stage in the sky, stars speckled across dark blue. All Might rubs his shoulder for comfort before revealing news: bad ones. His plan of defeating All for One for good, never having him torment his family again. If All Might had to die while fighting him, he'd take that risk. Aizawa. All Might starts biting his lower lip anxiously. Aizawa huffs air, visibly escaping his mouth. I know that tone of voice. What the hell are you about to do? I'll tell you after. There isn't enough time. The villain after Midoriya. I'll make sure he never lays a hand on our boy again. Before Aizawa could beg for Toshinori to stay, he had already left. Midoriya, held back from falling by Eraserhead's capture weapon, Midoriya dangled over death. Every move to escape his grasp was answered with a tighter grip. After a few moments, the vigilante was hauled up by Eraserhead. The underground hero's eyes were blown wide. Unlike something he'd ever seen before, eyes rimmed with red from crying, guilt settled within Midoriya's heart, causing it to ache. He held the kid in his arms despite how much his injuries protested at the contact. Don't ever scare us like that again, kid. Tears streamed down Midoriya's face, while realizing how devastated Eraserhead was for him. Not only him, but also Toshinori. He wanted to ask about the whereabouts of the other man. Ultimately, he decided against it. There would be more time to question everything because of Eraserhead saving him. Right now, though, Midoriya deserved to indulge. Face laying in the crook of the underground hero's neck, apologies spilled out his mouth between sobs. Every apology was met with a hand through his green curls. You don't have to be sorry. None of this is your fault, Eraserhead assures in a comforting tone. Midoriya cried harder. My mom, she died because of me. Knowing all too well the grief Midoriya must have felt, he sat there on the roof. There were many memories shared between the pair, providing the kid an escape from the horribly self-sacrificing life he lived, where Eraserhead befriended an incredibly hurt and damaged 14-year-old, relationships blossoming into villain-fighting partnerships alongside a family bond, multiple occasions referring to the vigilante as his and All Might's kid. 𝐻𝐻𝐻 dying provided an opening for the caretakers to fill that void. Loud sounds of civilians came from the streets. Both looked below to see someone projected on a big screen. All Might trading punches with All for One. Appearance simply explained as completely wrecked, swiftly falling to the ground together. They pushed everyone away to be closer, the fight amped up with blood, and the surroundings trashed. Midoriya's shaky hand latches on the Eraserhead's uniform, holding the other back. While trying not to explode into more tears by the looks of it, he'd lose another person he cared for because of All for One. Eraserhead growls angrily. Let me go. Toshinori's hurt. Not a chance. Bakugo walks toward them with fists to his side. You'll get yourself killed. The explosive blonde's expression wasn't the usual. Red eyes darted from All Might to Midoriya as he tried to cope with both things. Bakugo's idol might die, yet his childhood friend would be okay, alive, breathing right in front of him. He didn't think when holding Midoriya's wrist in a deadly grip, feeling his arm flex and unflex in discomfort proved the nerd was alive. Relief from Bakugo's side stayed short-lived. Civilians gasping made their eyes shoot to the display. Toshinori, not All Might, was beaten to the brink of death. Everyone watched with shocked expressions on their faces. No one knew about this weak, frail form. He wore most hours of the day to see the symbol of peace on the cusp of losing it. Left civilians worried. Who could protect them now? It left uncertainty about their future of heroism. As a whole, everyone chanted, All Might. Yet in small voices Midoriya and Toshinori whispered, Toshinori, come back home to us. A vigorous battle ended with a fist standing tall into the air, showcasing the broken man with his broken body coming out victorious. Neither Midoriya nor Aizawa took any time before sprinting toward Kamino. The nearest hospital was sure to hold Toshinori's worn-out body. Stepping into the hospital with their noses assaulted by the sterile smell, both were prohibited from visiting until being personally given the okay from Toshinori himself. Midoriya hesitatingly speaks up, Are you okay? I should be asking you that. As soon as all this blows over, would you like to be put in counseling with Hound Dog? Aizawa asks while resting a hand on Midoriya's shoulder. That might be for the best with everything that has happened recently. I could use some kind of help. Will Hound Dog allow it? I'm not exactly a UA student. Nezu and Hound Dog have talked it over before. If there is anything else you need, then vocalize what it is. Toshinori and I are here to help you in any way we can. Okay, thank you, Aizawa. Midoriya leans his head onto his shoulder. Aizawa's hand goes through his hair. You're welcome, Midoriya. The doctor came out a few hours later, allowing them to enter the room. Aizawa had been in the same situation yesterday. The same white-on-white furniture and walls that was an eyesore. That recollection wouldn't be important or necessary. Toshinori needed them now more than ever. One blink later, Midoriya was already at Toshinori's side, throwing his arms around him. Sobbing filled the room from the two, proving how much like son and father they were. It sent warmth in his chest, melting all the worry from the day away. There was hope for a better future. Yogi. Aizawa trailed off when blue eyes met his own. The underground hero's breath hitched at the gaze. 𝐴𝐻𝐸, getting the hint. Midoriya moved back to make way for their reunion. Collapsing onto the hospital bed, Aizawa smashed his lips against Toshinori's, instead of the drunken kiss of their first, which lust and desperation ran wild. Desperation with this kiss, rooted in fear of losing one another. He'd inches away from death. Yet he persevered and lived another day feeling warm, alive lips. Never felt better. One hand resting on Toshinori's hollow cheek to caress the bruise there. A throat being cleared emptied the intimate moment between them. Midoriya's face was red with eyes trained toward the floor. I'm still here. Apologies, young Midoriya. Toshinori blushes profusely. I may have acted. Don't apologize for my actions. We'll discuss this at a later date. Toshinori asks. Aizawa sits beside Toshinori with their fingers intertwined. The vigilante moves a chair to sit next to him. There are more important issues to speak of currently. Midoriya's mother. Midoriya winced. Could I leave the room for this conversation? Understandable, go ahead. Intense silence grew. When Midoriya left the hospital room, once kind blue eyes were lit ablaze, giving the implication that Toshinori knew about 𝐀𝐻𝐸's death. How much it seemed to affect him was a mystery, though. Almost as if he personally knew her, when Aizawa had no recollection of his knowledge, going beyond the mother of the vigilante. Teeth bit into Toshinori's lip until blood trickled down as he spoke. Midoriya was my mentor. Grief evident in his voice, Toshinori spoke of his past, opening himself up to Aizawa fully, one for all, and all it came with laid bare before him. Some tears escaped his eyes. But before they fell, the underground hero cleaned them off. Aizawa slowly came to understand how hard this death was on Toshinori, as well revealing that he knew Midoriya since the vigilante was a baby. Clearing up some air to why he cared so much for someone the symbol of peace, apparently barely spoke to crying could be heard from the other side of the door. Respectfully, they ignored how familiar the sounds were. This makes a lot of sense, thank you for telling me. Aizawa nods, hands still holding each other's. Toshinori doesn't try to fake a smile. Aizawa is glad. You're welcome. I do feel bad for not admitting to our relationship earlier. I wanted to wait until telling Midoriya something like this. The boy's already been through enough. By the sound of it, Aizawa walks over to the door and opens it. I'd like to believe he's grateful you shared stories about someone he loves to have someone who also knows about 𝐻𝐻𝐻, isn't that right? Midoriya walks inside, while standing awkwardly near the bedside. Yes, and I understand how you know my secret now, and is that okay with you? I can't do anything about it, Midoriya shrugs, as Aizawa moves him back to Toshinori. You've kept it a secret, so I have no reason to be upset with you. Thank you for helping my mom when she really needed it. Toshinori coughs some blood in his hand before continuing. No problem. Everything calming down reminded Aizawa of his full body pains. Too busy to recognize the difference between physical and mental pain, his body shuddered as he sat back into the stiff, uncomfortable chair. Perceptive as he is, Toshinori noticed and pressed the button to call for a nurse. Midoriya's eyebrow raised in confusion, while Aizawa groaned. Aizawa had a full body cast after the USG attack. He took it off earlier than allowed, so I'm calling someone to take him to his own hospital bed, Toshinori informs, staring daggers at Aizawa. He is unfazed by the staring. I don't need to be on bed arrest any longer, Toshinori. You won't be fine. Midoriya's hands are in tight fists. Listen to him, I don't want anyone else I love to be hurt. His voice breaks, and they all pull Midoriya into a hug. Shortly after, Aizawa willingly let himself get whisked away by a doctor. Instead of following them, the vigilante lingered with Toshinori, admitting to himself that he missed the men, finding comfort in their presence. After watching his mom be murdered with a void of familiar love, Midoriya wonders if they could fill it. He loves his mother deeply. Yet he found himself becoming more fond of this new family they were creating. Would Toshinori and Aizawa want to be his dads? Thoughts of the new development made Midoriya ponder what would be next for the potential family he longed for. Days turned into 2 weeks of recovery for Aizawa and Toshinori separately. They apologized to Midoriya for having him stay in a hospital most of the day, spending at least half of his day with each caretaker. The vigilante insisted that he didn't mind, and was glad they were still alive. With much time on their hands, Midoriya enrolled in an online school. Nurses he befriended would give him a pull-out bed for the overnight stay. Once Aizawa or Toshinori were asleep, he'd check their breathing to make sure they were alive. The guardians never mentioned feeling Midoriya's hand at night, not wearing his full body cast and doing physically straining activities right after caused Aizawa even greater injuries than the symbol of peace. Toshinori had grown used to his body injury, so the sling on his arm was taken off. After those weeks, his other guardian had to keep bandages on his face. Even after being discharged, they promised Aizawa that he didn't look too ridiculous before leaving together. I'm taking these off immediately when we get home, Aizawa huffed while picking at the bandages. What kind of example are you setting for young Midoriya? Toshinori chuckles. Screw you. A smirk creeped on Toshinori's face. I did say we should talk at a later date. Please, my poor virgin ears. Midoriya had both hands covering his ears. The caretakers blushed once realizing they were openly flirting. Next to Midoriya of all people. It confused him how they hadn't been in a relationship. Yet the two men are clearly in love. No platonic friends kiss like that after seeing their friend on the brink of death. Granted, Toshinori and Aizawa's circumstances are unique. One is the #1 hero, while the other is working underground, an unlikely pair with distinctly different personalities. As their self-appointed matchmaker, wingman Midoriya would help them finally end this dance of pining and love. Finally home after weeks, the vigilante collapsed onto his bedroom that had stayed unchanged. Thankfully, if it had changed between then and now, then someone must have broken in those walls, Midoriya acknowledged as the guest room became his walls, his bed, his room. Laying down on the bed felt right. Then a voice called out to him in a stern tone, "Take a shower. You're going to make your bed smell like a hospital." Midoriya complied instantly at Aizawa's order. Does this classify as the later date you were speaking of? Aizawa wonders. Leaning against the wall, Toshinori sat down on the living room couch. Of course, my apologies for the delay to this conversation, Aizawa. 𝐲𝐴, we've been through enough that a first-name basis is only logical. Indeed, 𝐲𝐴. 2 kisses later, they'd finally be given the opportunity to discuss what it meant. Toshinori would admit the shock he was in when feeling Aizawa's lips at the hospital. Even his eyes were misty with tears as he kissed passionately. Was there a chance these feelings of affection were mutual? It seemed impossible when Toshinori's insecurities took charge. The possibility of someone young, attractive, kind, and intelligent to share said feelings. As Aizawa would say, illogical kissing in the heat of the moment is a common occurrence. The symbol of peace took advantage and indulged, while his co-worker was drunk before. Sorry, Toshinori bowed. When young Midoriya set us up on a date, we kissed. Well, made out. That behavior is horrible, and I'll never do it again. What? Aizawa looked at him incredulously. Toshinori repeated slower this time. I'm sorry. Yeah, I heard what you said. I'm not an idiot. It's just that. Never mind. Had Toshinori's mind been so warped that he actually thought Aizawa sounded disappointed? Despite giving hope to civilians around him, he did not let himself hope. They were just 2 men who took care of a teenager together. Yes, the situation would raise some eyebrows. Toshinori is well aware of that. He should stop feeding into his own delusions, though. Everything between Aizawa and him is strictly platonic, spending most nights grading together. Completely platonic, making tea coffee for one another. Completely platonic, putting a hand through the other's hair. Completely platonic bantering that is mistaken as flirting. Completely platonic sleeping in the same bed. Completely platonic kissing. Those nights ago, I remember what happened vividly. I have never been a lightweight yogi, Aizawa confessed, cutting off his train of thought. Toshinori's eyes widened. Wait, you lied? Did you want to forget? Apologies for reminding you. No, that's Aizawa groaned into his hands. You are focusing on the entirely wrong thing. What should I be focusing? Aizawa's face turned in the direction of the other man. Yagi, I have romantic feelings for you, otherwise why in the hell would I be kissing you twice? Platonic kissing is something some students taught me about. How kissing their friend didn't necessarily mean romantic feelings were involved. Toshinori informs, his finger pointed upward. I am in my 30s, and you are being ridiculous. At those words, Toshinori couldn't help but sputter blood onto his hand. Aizawa laid his feelings bare in front of him. To know he had been the subject of the underground hero's affections made Toshinori's stomach swell with that hope. He lacked every neuron scream to say yes and confess already, yet Toshinori remembered the promise he made. To protect Aizawa and Midoriya, letting himself date because he's finally retired was selfish. Hero work is never done. Even when All Might no longer exists, Toshinori exhales heavily. 𝐲𝐴, I also have feelings for you. But dating me isn't a good idea. A relationship would put both you and our boy in danger. We can't be together. I'm sorry. You don't want to be together. Aizawa corrects. Leaving for his bedroom moping is immature, and Aizawa is a grown adult. That thought repeated while he groaned into his pillow loudly, hoping Toshinori heard. So he would go back home. Leaving the room was for the best, because Aizawa was on the brink of lashing out. The underground hero thought that now being retired, the symbol of peace, would allow himself to live a little. They were raising a kid together, for God's sake. How much more romantic could their situation get? Unexpectedly, the heartbreak hurt more than Aizawa thought. He never got this attached to a person before. This family turned him. Soft knocks came from the other side of the door. It wasn't Toshinori. Since Aizawa memorized his knocking pattern, that doesn't mean he's lovesick. Hey, Aizawa. Don't worry, Toshinori has already left. Coward. Sure, come in. Aizawa sits up from his bed, trying to look less like a wreck. Midoriya opens the door a crack. I'd ask if you are okay, but by how both of you look, I know the answer. The conversation didn't go well. Terrible. Talk to me about it. Aizawa scoffed. I'm not about to let a kid therapize me. Midoriya shrugged with an annoyed sigh. Fine, whatever. I was just trying to be nice. No need to be rude about it. Brainlessly, Aizawa caved from telling a kid about his love life made him feel a great deal of shame. Midoriya was a great staple of the relationship, though his efforts had them confess in the first place. Once their conversation had been recited, the kid thought scrunched up face, pondering what to say to a clearly distressed adult. Give him time. After 𝐀𝐻 happened, giving Toshinori time was out of the question at any moment. Either caretaker could die. Every time Aizawa worked, the risk of dying was already plentiful. Pursuing All Might meant a bigger target on his back. But that is something he's willing to risk. Time. We don't even know how much time he has left. I can't keep waiting, because by the time Toshinori decides, he'll be dead. Stop! Don't say stuff like that. Midoriya cried. He turns to look at Aizawa with a devastated look on his face. A nerve was hit. His mother just died. The door slammed shut with Midoriya no longer in his room. Somehow Aizawa successfully ruined both relationships he held close to his heart. A headache creeped up while moving around in bed. When well rested, the underground hero would fix everything. Hopefully. Suddenly the Cloud9 feeling disappeared as quickly as it came, reminded of his mother disintegrating before his eyes. Midoriya's stomach churned as he texted Bakugo. If they could hang out soon and escape from his mind. A moment to forget. Comfort was what he needed. He'd ask Aizawa. But that's not exactly his strong suit. Only Toshinori knew how to be gentle with his words. His presence in itself is the definition of feeling safe. With diligent fingers, the contact with a smiling picture of All Might had been pressed. Midoriya's breaths have gotten shaky. Toshinori, are you there? My boy. The response is of urgency. What's wrong? Are you safe? Is Aizawa there? See, calm down, we're safe. I wanted to hear your voice, Midoriya assured, clutching his phone tightly. My voice? Young Midoriya, would you like me to come over? You know I'd be there in an instant if you asked me to. Please. Okay. Toshinori inhales and exhales deeply. Do you want me to pick you up, or do you want me in your house? Your house, mine. Through the phone he can hear frantic shuffling. Sure, would you like to stay on the phone with me? Yes. Deep voice rambled on about anything in Toshinori's mind. Every thought he vocalized calmed Midoriya's nerves, exhaustion hitting him until responses grew into incoherent mumbles. The vigilante barely noticed when the voice was no longer coming from the screen. Instead, Toshinori was kneeling at his bedside, absent-mindedly stroking Midoriya's cheek, while whispering praises, almost lulling him to sleep. Almost, because Midoriya wakes at the shadow of Aizawa leaning against the doorframe. Few moments of awkward staring pass until Aizawa speaks. Kid, I'd like to talk, but only if you are comfortable enough to. Sure, Midoriya yawns sleepily. It was insensitive of me to mention Toshinori dying like that. Toshinori's face sours. Rejection doesn't mean I have the right to take it out on you. I'm sorry, Midoriya and Yagi. Midoriya smiles faintly. You are forgiven, 𝐻𝐸𝐬. Toshinori starts, but the underground hero doesn't let him finish. Stop blaming yourself. Maybe we should talk about this, Aizawa huffs, at a later date. Really? Go to bed, Midoriya. Yagi and I have to talk. With their son tucked in bed, Toshinori followed Aizawa into his bedroom. Watching the underground hero's face drop once they were alone caused him guilt. He wanted nothing more than to cave, to spin Aizawa around and kiss him until they were breathless. Go on actual dates where they get to hold hands and do things normal couples would. Each fantasy is hopeless, especially since the whole world now knows of his weak form. If villains got a hold of their relationship, Aizawa would be hurt or possibly even killed. Knowing the League of Villains were still around, the worry wasn't unfounded. The retired #1 can't allow this. Both caretakers sit on the bed to face each other. Aizawa's gaze grows, nerves at the pit of his non-existent stomach. Blonde bang twirled until the other began. Are you aware that I'm one of the most sought-out underground heroes? Constantly praised for my efficiency, no matter what or who the opponent is. Did you want me here to brag? Toshinori asks genuinely. No, you fool, I'm trying to prove my ability to protect myself. Dating you may place a target on my back. Yet I'm willing to take that sacrifice. Hero work can kill me too, you know. Don't we do it anyway? Aizawa raises his eyebrow. Toshinori crosses his arms over his chest. That isn't the same, 𝐻𝐸𝐬. Yagi, it is. You just can't accept that I'm willing to put my life on the line to be happy with you. Back at 𝐀𝐻, I thought you'd die. Aizawa's voice cracks for a second before he clears his throat to continue. Instead, that experience told me I shouldn't waste another day without telling you we could die tomorrow. But as long as you're by my side, it will be okay. I'm dying. Toshinori's eyes glued to the floor. Aizawa's eyes widened. What? 𝐸𝐡𝐢 looked into my future and saw death. By now it's said to be this or next year. Don't waste your time on an old man like me that's bound to die during our relationship. What I said still stands, Yagi. Nothing you say will convince me otherwise. I want you. Aizawa assures promises he doesn't break such promises. I want you too, but Aizawa cuts him off. Stop saying you recuperate these feelings. If a relationship isn't what you want, I am in love with you. Do you love me? 𝐲𝐴, please. I can't. Toshinori tries. Aizawa won't let him. Then don't give me false hope. Be real with me for a second and tell me what you want. Stop this, Toshinori pleads. You don't want to hurt me, I know. But this is hurting me more than a proper rejection ever could. Tell me. Yagi, Toshinori, do you love me? Yes, I do love you. A few tears fall. I've loved you after months into our friendship. My heart belongs to you. I don't want to lose you. I love you too. Aizawa puts his hand over Toshinori's hand. And I'm not dying that easily. We'll find a way. We will. The hand moved from under Aizawa's hand to cupping the side of his cheek. Toshinori rubbed gently, while leaning in for a kiss, their lips moving in unison, tongue tasting one another, feeling at peace with the new development. Something both had longed for was gifted. Someone to have a family. With more days passed and Toshinori and Aizawa became more openly affectionate. The Vigilante took great pride in helping their relationship flourish. While watching their love prosper, Midoriya grew envious and wanted that for himself. Someone to fall in love with. Everything was coming slowly, but life seemed just a tad brighter. He had his first counseling session yesterday. It went well. Maybe letting his walls fall for even a second would help with future endeavors on every kind of relationship. Midoriya already had a person in mind. Katsuki Bakugo had been the first person he ever grew genuine feelings for. Heart stammering at the gaze of his bright red eyes. The gruff voice sends a spark throughout Midoriya's body. Friendship began to grow roots once given the opportunity to. The problem came with the reciprocation of said feelings. What chance did he have though? Now that Bakugo was at UA, the pool for dating grew tenfold in size. Midoriya never stood a chance against others like Kirishima. They sat in Bakugo's dorm room, a newly established building after Midoriya's kidnapping, and All Might's Fall, a room of fairly normal nature in the terms of dorm rooms, everything either black or orange with some green to match his hero suit. Not very creative, but Midoriya digresses, sitting on the end of Bakugo's bed. While catching up, jealousy grew with the mentions of new people he begrudgingly befriended. Oi, Bakugo growled. Did you even listen to what I said? No? Got him, nerd. I was asking why you've been spacing out like that recently. What happened with the League of Villains? Bakugo crossed his arms. Midoriya tensed. I don't want to talk about it yet. Please, let's move on from this. Deku. Fine, you don't have to talk to me when you're ready. Bakugo shrugs. With an intense glare, Midoriya waits a few moments before deciding what to ask. Why are you being nice? Shouldn't you be pushing me to tell you what's going on? Bakugo exhaled. No, because if you couldn't already tell, that's not me anymore. I've been a prick to you, and I want to make it right. Don't worry, Kaken, you've been forgiven since you helped me while I was a vigilante. Midoriya waved off. You haven't even let me apologize. Bakugo's eyebrows smushed together in annoyance. Sorry. Bakugo rolls his eyes lightheartedly. I pushed you away because no matter if you had a quirk or not, you always seemed better than me as a hero. To combat those feelings, I bullied you through middle school. Once your mother was taken, I felt guilt for the first time, watching you destroy yourself in the hopes of tracking Inko down. It made me realize my actions and words. Izuku, you are the hero I could never be. I'm sorry. Sorry for everything. Mouth left agape from shock. Midoriya processed the apology, something he's been longing for since their relationship was on better terms, airing out the complicated relationship to be one of friendship. The vigilante forgave him the day Bakugo gave him necessities. He became someone to depend on when no one else was around. A budding new friendship might do him good. Romance could wait. Thank you, I appreciate it. Midoriya smiled shyly. A large weight that Bakugo carried until now had finally been lifted. Being told directly that his past would stay the past put a small smirk on his face. Without the elephant in the room, he was able to breathe near Midoriya, speaking about new things at UA. Amongst other things, they continued their time together, the moon coming down to rest, watching old All Might clips like they'd done in the past. Nostalgia from such a moment is broken by knocks at Bakugo's dorm room door. Bakugo. Are you finally going to eat with us instead of staying in your room texting Midoriya? Kaminari teases. His eyes widen at the realization that Midoriya is in the room with Bakugo. Eyebrows wiggling suggestively, Bakugo hisses, red-faced from embarrassment. Don't say that to your friend. Be nice, Kakin, Midoriya chastised. The door swings open and reveals Kirishima and Zero too. Whoa, didn't know you had a boy over. Sorry man, Bakugo growls while going to stand. Get out of here before I blow your goddamn faces off. Run, Kirishima shouts, scrambling out the room downstairs. Had every classmate of Bakugo's sitting down and eating normally, he'd be the one cooking for them. But he's been a bit preoccupied with a certain green-haired person. That individual happened to become close-knit friends with Uraraka, Ida, and Todoroki. They all knew Midoriya's number, speaking to him on a regular basis. An itch of that horrid new feeling took charge. He was getting desperate. He needed Kirishima's advice. The telltale sign. Bakugo reached his limit. Kirishima, you mean now? Bakugo stomped away with him following at toe. Sure. In a secluded far corner, they looked around to make sure no one could overhear them. Bakugo crossed his arms while leaning against the wall. Before he could speak, Kirishima smirked. Knowingly, it's about Midoriya. I hate when you're right. Bakugo dragged his hand down his face. Deku has been talking to other people. Does it make you angrier than usual? Kirishima questioned. Yeah, he smiled wide, showing off his sharp teeth. Do you have feelings for Midoriya? Why? Bakugo cut himself off. Bakubro, what you are experiencing is jealousy. I see the way you act around him on the phone, or even in person. Accept it, you like him. Up until that exact moment, Bakugo never considered attraction an option. When and how did this happen? Assisting Midoriya on tracking his mother down did more than he'd bargained for. Somehow finding himself liking the one person he used to hate out of all people, Kirishima, helped Bakugo come to this conclusion. Shame aside, he was grateful another problem arose with this epiphany. Though the friendship they were going through might be ruined by said feelings, they were finally on good terms, all around fine. I like him, Bakugo admits. Tell me what to do about this. Don't worry, I'm a master in the love department, Kirishima stated in a confident-sounding tone. I doubt that. Overhearing Bakugo having a crush broke the confidence the Vigilante built. While eating, explaining his thought process to Todoroki, Uraraka, and Ida different views on what and how to progress Midoriya's relationship with the blonde. They gave their input despite their lack of romance. Slowly his class, one of friends, dispersed, some heading out to bed, Todoroki being the exception and instead lingering behind. Leaning on the couch next to Midoriya, bland expression, showing a hint of concern. Is getting in a relationship with Bakugo an escape from your life problems? Midoriya's eyes widened as he shook his head side to side vigorously. No, I truly do like him. Having a partner doesn't solve your problems. Don't go into this believing that, Todoroki reminded in a stern yet caring tone. Thank you, Todoroki. I'll keep that in mind. You're a great friend. The explosive blonde came stomping toward Midoriya with a determined glint in his eyes. Get over here, nerd. We need to effectively cut off by the infamous retired number 1 young Midoriya. It's time to go home. Yeah, kid, come on. Aizawa adds. Okay, dads. At the slip-up, Midoriya goes white as a ghost. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. The entire silent car ride made Midoriya anxious and waiting for when they'd correct him for the moment that Aizawa takes him into the system, when Toshinori and the Vigilante completely lose contact again. Because of it, his leg jumping with nerves haywire. Once pulled into their parking lot, both guardians turned around to face Midoriya. You can refer to us as your dad's Toshinori, and I talked it over. And if that is how you view us, then we don't mind being your father figures. We've loved you like a son already, Aizawa assures with a slight tilt upwards of his lips. Midoriya breaks down into a fit of tears. The concept of Toshinori and Aizawa wanting him, liking him, was foreign. Both hands squeezed the Vigilante's shaky one in a comforting manner. He smiled wobbly in response, eyes trained to the ground nervously at their new development. Thanks, dads. When Midoriya finally gained a dad, he ended up with 2. Over text, Midoriya told Bakugo what happened to his mom. Tears fell from his eyes during the heartbreaking conversation. His newly established fathers rubbed his shoulders, bringing up such a traumatic situation. Aizawa suggested a meeting with Hound Dog. After going back and forth for a while, Midoriya Caved the success had the underground hero growing too confident with his convincing abilities. Turning to Toshinori, he crossed both arms. You should go too someday. Hound Dog is available for teachers as well. Why haven't you gone then? Toshinori quips with a smirk. Midoriya groans. Can you let me out of the car before arguing? Aizawa puts his hand on the vigilante's shoulder. We're not having an argument, kid. It's a civil conversation about opposing opinions. Last time I checked, you said every hero should have a therapist. By dads. Midoriya rolls his eyes. Toshinori chuckles, waving goodbye. Have a good time at counseling, my boy. Don't question if next time you see Yagi that he is dead. Aizawa glares at him, with murderous glint in his eyes. The couple watch as their son slowly goes out of their field of vision. Out the corner of Aizawa's eye, a spiky blonde-haired boy is coming toward the car. Both expressions are filled with confusion and worry. Nothing good could come out of a student stomping to their car like a man on a mission, especially when said student is Bakugo, wearing formal wear from his mother's clothing line. It was too early in his life for a midlife crisis. Those older people's things are reserved for Toshinori. Bakugo knocks on the car's window impatiently. Let me in. What business do you have with us? Aizawa raises an eyebrow. We need to talk. Is it important? Like hell it is. Do you see what I'm wearing? Bakugo gestures dramatically at his suit. Maybe we should hear him out. Shout. Toshinori whispers in the underground hero's ear, squinting his eyes. Aizawa shrugs. Fine. Driving mostly in silence. Toshinori glances between the two, tension running thick from the whole bullying fiasco. Despite their past, the number one hero had faith in Bakugo to treat his son right. He'd been informed about the apology that Midoriya forgave immediately. But Aizawa didn't agree. A restraining order propped on their refrigerator by a magnet. The option if their relationship went bad again. Ensuring his safety is top priority. After all, seated on the couch, Bakugo's posture was straight. It's about Izuku. You two are on a first-name basis now. Aizawa scoffs. Aren't you two on a first-name basis too? Bakugo snarks back before calming down. I mean, got him. Spit it out already. Better not be here to just waste our time. Blush found its way to Bakugo's face. I love your son. This is me asking permission to date him. Toshinori makes a small awa noise. As long as no but love. Toshinori reprimands his partner. Love. Aizawa shakes his head as pet names aren't important at the moment. Bakugo, it is a no from me. I do acknowledge, though, that I cannot control who Izuku likes. Do as you please. But I won't agree. Understood. Bakugo nods. Toshinori smiles, reassuringly. Me on the other hand. I support you too. I can tell that you've truly matured since taking anger management classes. As long as he accepts your apology, I do too. Wanting the best for their son is a parental thing to do. Aizawa couldn't believe Toshinori would allow such a relationship to transpire. Limiting Midoriya in who he dates can be seen as controlling. Those people have different beliefs and values from the underground hero. This situation required a family discussion of morals and toxic relations to warn Midoriya beforehand. We need to hear Izuku's reaction before finalizing our answers. Aizawa sighs in defeat. Will you be waiting for him to confess your feelings? If I can, sure, fine by me, Yagi. Certainly. Let's discuss this matter further to ensure your best for our magnificent son. Toshinori puts his thumb up when Midoriya came home to his parents and childhood best friend. Talking it frankly shocked him. Counseling went good per usual. Hound Dog helped the vigilante realize how good his life is right now compared to last year. Spending too much time dwelling on the past, Midoriya never focused on the present or future. Watching Inko die is a traumatic experience that has permanently left a scare on the boy. On the optimistic side, his mom was set free. Instead of strapped to a chair, she'd been taken out of her misery. Nezu agreed to drive Midoriya home. After Toshinori asked him to, he understood why they couldn't pick him up from counseling. An oddly nervous Bakugo dressed formally sat on his couch. Drool threatened to leave his mouth at the sight. Why? As Midoriya looked between the three of them. Can I talk to Izuku alone? Of course, we'll be in the other room if any of you need us. Toshinori agreed, while dragging Aizawa by his shirt collar. Aizawa didn't appreciate the action one bit. Stop dragging me, Yagi. Since we were little, I couldn't imagine you not in my life. You've been such an integral part in me being a hero. No matter how much I hated you at some points, a part of me still remembered you as my childhood friend. All that confused me. But now I'm sure I know what I feel. Bakugo gazes deeply into his big green eyes. What I feel is love. Midoriya's face went bright red. Love. Would you let me date you? I asked your dads before, and one said yes, the other said no. Bakugo shrugged, as if not caring. Aizawa said no, huh? Midoriya giggled knowingly. Yeah, Bakugo chuckled. Are you going to respond or what, nerd? Both hands rested on the blonde's cheeks. Fingers brushing lightly, a small smile appears on Midoriya's face, before leaning in, their lips slot together perfectly like they were meant to be that way, completed, as if a puzzle piece. I've waited so long to hear you say that. Midoriya's lips quirk up, teary-eyed. He says I love you too. Happy tears streamed down his freckled tears, while continuing to kiss his boyfriend. Changes coming which overwhelmed Midoriya. Because he'd reached such a high in life, Bakugo runs his hand through the Vigilante's hair, whispering sweet nothings in his ear. Seeing such a soft side of him warmed Midoriya's heart. From the other side of the room, someone clears their throat. Aizawa glares so hard his quirk activates. Nezu has documents on everyone's address. Take that as you will. You can't threaten your student love. I can, and will. Aizawa hisses like a stray cat. Midoriya knew he was lucky to have parents and a boyfriend like them. He wouldn't trade them for the world.